What's up, y'all? It's your boy Anarchy coming at you with another Church of MHA Season 3, Episode 33, My Hero Academia, Chapter 374, Live Reaction. How y'all doing today? I know my regular's going to start pulling up at any moment, but as always, got to make sure I get this in the Discord and where it belongs. So, how have you guys been this holiday weekend? I've played through most of Pokemon Scarlet. Real quick, handled the TU3 update. Enjoyed some Thanksgiving, carved some turkey because the chef didn't feel like carving it. I don't know, what have you guys been up to this Thanksgiving weekend? I'll probably start this a little sooner than usual just because I know a lot of people are going to be busy this weekend anyway because it's, holiday weekend. So waiting for the numbers to hit a certain value might not make much sense. Hey, Tanisha Greer. Okay. MK the baby with the violet, Tiger Blaster, Mr. Andrew, Lamar Arrington, Cameron Bailey, and I can't believe you've done this already in here. And when you say limping in, Tanisha, did you pick up an entry over the weekend, over this past week? How was Black Panther 2? I've seen some mixed things. Been playing a whole lot of Pokemon this weekend. All right. Hey, what role you playing, Jason? I used to main mid lane, so I'm curious. That makes me wonder, did you ever notice when I wore my Yasuo shirt on stream? I don't know. Anyway, now I'm curious. All right. Actually, the fact that we got people filing in this quickly lets me know that this chapter is probably insane, which, since it's a 2-week break, makes sense. It's where Cushy likes to do that. Give us a crazy chapter with a 2-week break. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just hop on. Hey, Thomas. Oh. All right, well, you take any rest you need, Tanisha. Okay. Yeah, so Cameron Bailey, you saw my post on Twitter about it. I did watch the episode, didn't find it to be nearly as offensive as people made it sound. I understood the desire for more brrr in the animation of that. But the more I watch of this season and how we're not getting too much of the heavy Sakuga here, the more I think a lot of it was saved for things like the fight versus Nagant, or the fight that I think is going to be the season finale of Star and Stripe versus Shigaraki, or us getting some really oddly high detailed stuff for Deku versus Muscular. And I could be wrong, I could be wrong about all that. That's just kind of where I think Bones has their focus. I think they heard a lot of the criticism for last season, and which this is why people need to be more balanced in how they talk about stuff and less reactionary and hyperbolic, because I think they took some of the criticism from last season and took it as, you guys were so mad about the first core having lots of good animation and then our schedule messing up with the back end that we're going to flip it and let the content carry the first core and put a bunch of animation effort into the second half. And I think that's kind of what might have ended up being the takeaway here, but that's neither here nor there. No, I have not read the chapter yet, and because we somehow already hit 25, I'm just going to go ahead and hop on it because I don't expect this stream to hit as many numbers. Starting the chapter. My Hero Academia, chapter 374, Butterfly Effect, no color page, no cover page. Just a present Mike watching, Shirakumo's hand is visible, but it's Kurogiri's face with a little bit of Shirakumo's eyes, and then blackness. This chapter is the Butterfly Effect. All right, I wasn't expecting this, but we're getting an update. back to the present. Washington State, USA. The massive, well, let's see, Portland, Albuquerque, Phoenix, Salt Lake City, Billings, Rapids, hold on. Dallas, Houston, just to see. Seattle, okay. Minneapolis, Atlanta. Okay, so you know what? I gotta give Jorge his props because he's going out of his way to show you that he at least knows where a good number of cities are. And him including Grand Rapids is a geography flex because nobody cares about Grand Rapids or not Grand Rapids, but you know what I'm saying, the space in the Dakotas. Hey, Spectrum. All right. Let me get back to the chapter. Let me not focus on this map too much. The massive, cumulonimbus storm system that sprang up over Japan is growing at a rapid pace. It may ride east on the jet stream and affect the weather in North America. According to the Weather Bureau, convectional currents caused by repeated heat spikes have combined with the tropical low pressure system in Japan's southwest to form an unprecedented type of enormous inferno cumulonimbus cloud. And I like the fact that they emphasize, so basically between Endeavor, different attacks from Shoto, and what Dabi was doing, they've altered the weather. So in a way, the Todoroki family in this moment has finally lived up to the All Might power level that they've been chasing this whole time. Because you think back to the fact that when we were introduced to All Might Smash, one of the first things we got to see him do was change the weather with a punch. And there you go. And you notice how they're all doing different attacks in the flashback. But can the flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil really bring about a hurricane in Texas? Is the fate of our superpower society, which began with a single glowing baby, to descend into utter chaos? The power of a single man can change the world. Mara, what's with the ad-libbing? I stand firmly opposed to the government's decisions. No, to the world's decision to pander to all for one. Hey, yo. Okay. I like this. Because this is basically somebody being like, I have the platform, I have the ability to talk about this. And what I like about this is that this reporter is effectively aware of the quark singularity theory. And she's basically saying here, enabling Tomura Shigaraki is dumb as shit, and we should not be doing that. What's more, the fact that these attacks can cause such a disruption to weather and eventually lead to a phenomena across the globe does mean for the power scaling nerds out there that we are moving into country level effects. We are moving into planetary attacks. You're welcome. So expect to see some really weird power scaling takes coming forward in the near future. Cut to commercial quick. Crap, she already said it. Japan, communal world. Todoroki subdued Dabi. Talk about firepower. Even you will be burned by that. Okay, so Burn is still alive somehow. Even you will be burned by that. You mustn't engage him. You've already hit your limit with your phosphor move. We've all hit our limits and then some. We gave it everything, and yet he's the only one still standing. Even though I share our father's blood, too. Only Toya can keep going. All right. So we see he's got the X on his chest, maintaining it better than, which before I hit this page turn, I'm wondering if we're going to finally get an explanation. I think we're finally going to get an explanation on his power. I'm hoping that it's what I predicted with him being able to lower the temperature of his body, even though he doesn't create ice. And that's part of how he's going to be able to maintain this attack. Also, I like the steam vents. If you notice, like in the big explosion, or what it looks like an explosion, it's basically just like a small sun kind of sitting there, which we've talked about before with him being able to liquidize stuff, that he's probably, generating fire that's close to the temperature of a red giant. Woo, woo, woo. So you see all the steam vents, stuff melting just from being too close to him. And of course, Shoto had, in fact, done when he did the phosphor move, created a bunch of ice. And if you remember, all the buildings were covered in frost. All that is being instantly vaporized and shot up. So that explains the clouds too, to create the storm. So there we go. Dear old dads at Gunga, huh? Way too far away. They really screwed us, splitting us up with those portals. If I could keep duking it out with Shoto in the hope of bringing Dad a parting gift, my body won't last. And then he's using the, all right, fire to fly. No surprise there. He's trying to fly over to our father. This goes way beyond powering through with that sheer will he's inherited. It doesn't make sense. I thought his body wasn't made for heat. How the hell is he not falling to pieces? Get back here. I'm still on my feet. You want to kill me, right? Looks like you're the half-baked one now. Mr. Daddy Issues. I know I said no pestering, but I have fantastic news. Apparently you get to travel free of charge. UA High, Midoriya versus All for One. The wind's really picking up. My control over the water might slip. Are you hanging in there, Monoma? This battle will go down in the history books, right? I'll make sure the Ministry of Education points out that we won here because of me. In that cage, we've got Eggshot, Lemillion, Genist, and Midoriya fighting for all of us. I'd be a fool to whine about the measly need to blink. The experience of one's youth determines the entirety of one's life. Woo! Man. What if his skin wasn't made for his firepower, but the rest of his insides are? It's the Linkin Park. I tell you, his Linkin Park is too strong. Let's see. Now we know why East came back for this chapter. East isn't going to be back for a while, more than likely. I got to warn y'all of that now. East is still taking care of his health issues. So we'll see when he returns. Mans is going through it, and we just got to make sure we keep sending that love. And then, let me do that now while it's in my brain. But I think it's worth noting that almost every character that we've gotten emphasis on in My Hero, of the students especially, we've gotten their youngest childhood insecurities pointed out at some level or some time period. And I want you to think about how even Monoma saying that his over eccentricity, even his hero costume not being flashy, his name, people have always kind of been like, well, you're copying other people, you're kind of a fraud. So him choosing the name Phantom Thief, well, yeah, I'll steal their powers. Him being rambunctious in personality to offset, the fact that he was told he wouldn't be able to stick out if he was always copying other people's powers. He had to create a way for him to stand out on his own. So even that character, when you look at the effects of the bullying and downgrading, look at Shinso, somebody who ended up really bitter towards people who had an easier time getting into the hero course because of the conventional viewpoint of what it takes to be a hero, who ends up clutching it in this section of the story to enable us to even get to this point. So I want you to think about that for a second. Shinso failed the UA hero course entrance exam because the hero course couldn't test for a power like his. The most he could have done is mind controlled other students and had those students destroy robots for him, but that's not really being a hero. So that's not what they wanted to test for, and robots can't be brainwashed. Deku, I'm the Deku who does my best because of the fact that his name is that name Deku is rooted in you can't do anything, you're worthless, you're a wooden doll. Like there's so much that just plays into this that it's kind of ridiculous. But yeah, let me pop back over here, and we see that Melvin is bloated, trying to recover from the hole that he had punched in his chest. And more than anything else. All right, so the experience of one youth determine the entirety of one's life, and more than anything else, I place faith in a person's emotions. And then we see Mike getting thrown here with the Shigaraki. So Spinner is going to be here too. The feelings he harbors for his friends after leading such a dark life. Gunga mounted Villa Ruins, Endeavor versus All for One. You kept Kurogiri in the dark, so to help him take immediate action, I planted a micro device in one of Shimura's hands. We finally got confirmation. We finally got the confirmation that that is Nana Shimura's hand. Finally. Because, man, I've been waiting for that confirmation. Because we saw, like, as he was getting thrown around, you know, the different hands as they were breaking during NBA. We got to see the grandpa hands. We got to see the Nana hand, the Hana hands. We got to see the mom flashback. Like, we saw all those different but we never got an emphasis. Never got an emphasis on Nana Shimura. And then Horikoshi went out of his way to put her hand right there on the back of his head. It is glorious because let's be serious for a second. He wouldn't have cared what Hotaro's name was or any of that stuff. And to answer your question, I think that micro device is part of what gave it the extra durability. Oh, what this says to me is that without question, AFO collected the corpses of every single previous One for All user as a trophy, or at the very least, specifically hers. That's because, what did you call it? Shigaraki destroyed one of the father hands. Yes, Iguchi played his part. Hey, Dad. What's more? Oh, Hawks. Ooh. Oh, Hawks. The death of that sad man gave rise to a rancor in a young woman's heart. The man who would overrun the world to make good on his grudges gave that femme fatale just the tools she needed to bring ruin to all. Now you've got a front row seat, Takami. Time to learn how it might have turned out if you hadn't made his death your top priority back then. Kill them right now. And to quote the English dub Kirishima all the way back during episode 11, was it episode 12? Not sounding very heroic here, Hawks. Oh, man. Oh, man.
Sick ass chapter.
What an entrance, Volk. How you doing?
Hey, I saw the pop up, and I was like, okay, I gotta see your reaction. So, all right, so what we've been speculating for about a year now has finally happened.
Yep, and we've talked about this. Horikoshi not going to Toga's battlefield was him telling us it was going to be one of, if not the most important battlefield for a juncture of the story.
Yeah.
And people were like, "Yo, she's not getting a moment. Nothing important is happening there." And what happens? We get, man. But that does make me wonder, what's going on with Ochako?
That was the big question, because you see twice, Toga, I guess, holding half of Suyu's mask. So it implies she laid the beat down at least one of them using
She got
her.
smoked.
So she's probably out for a bit. As for Ochako, I think next chapter is not just going to pick up where we left off. I think this is setting up a flashback for like 2 to 3 chapters where we see what happened in Ochako versus Toga. Because remember, Ochako and the others do not know that Toga can copy specific quirks of people she really likes or is close to. They didn't know that. They would have prepared for that otherwise.
Yeah, they didn't find out until she basically was like, "I loved you so much that I killed people with your quirk." And Ochako was like, "What? I wouldn't do that."
Yeah. Well, they didn't know she had twice his blood, right? So
yeah.
Like, okay, and to serve as a refresher, the whole reason Hawks made Twice his very first priority target in PLW when they first made their move against like the PLF, the League of Villains, is specifically because he can just spam copy all the strongest members of the league. Like, he can do that. And so, like, not just Shigaraki right now. Hawks is concerned seeing 2 Twices pop out of the portal and potentially more, is that they'll get to All For One and make a bunch of copies of him so that he can overwhelm the battlefield and then head over to where Deku is. And to be honest, I think that is what's going to happen. I think a bunch of All For One clones are going to pop up, and then the real All For One heads to UA through a portal to help Shigaraki.
Because the other super scary thing that this offers is, even if they don't clone AFO, can AFO simply take the quirk off of a duplicate?
Yeah.
Because if you can do blood transplants, if you can do that stuff, why not? And at this point, could he create a clone, have that clone remove rewind from him so that he doesn't have to disappear?
Oh, shit. Oh my God. Right. Oh, shit.
I mean, technically, he could just dump rewind on one of the clones too. It doesn't even matter. He could swap he could give one rewind and take the duplication from the other and be just fine. MHA is ending in a year, guys. MHA is going to end by the end of this year, guys.
I do have a question about that, though. Wouldn't he have handed rewind off to somebody else? Or
I mean, will it matter if he just, because technically he could give it to him and just take it back and it wouldn't be active anymore, right? So from that angle, give it to you, take it back. He just didn't want to yo-yo it to one of the heroes and potentially have them do anything good with it, I would think.
Okay, that makes sense. And because, like, he doesn't really, like, his body being kind of discarded, like his original body, is the goal. Like, he wants to be reborn inside Shigaraki. So I think we are just approaching the midpoint right now. I think what just finished was Act 1. I think Act 2 of this final battle is about to begin. And I said this, I think I said this is my own reaction to the chapter. I think my original estimate for 450 chapters, I don't know if we do hit that, but I think we might end up closer than I was thinking, because this is there's so much, man. There's so much.
This is because it's like we've got these. Look, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it right. The board is just stacked right now. And this is one of those things that I think we talked about previously in some of the other streams too. How could anybody truly believe that Horikoshi would let it be this easy for the heroes?
No.
Like, nothing about the established precedent of his writing style indicates the heroes get to have it this easy.
No, like they kind of drew attention to that about like 20 chapters back. It's like, oh, this is actually going pretty well. We might win. And of course, Kurogiri was always the trump card. I think the real question now is this other thing we've been predicting with Shigaraki and All For One going to be happening soon?
Man,
because look, there's no doubt All For One is eventually going to make his way to UA. That's been his plan. It's been his plan to overwhelm Deku using both of their using both his and Shigaraki's powers. But Shigaraki has made it very clear in the series he does not want to share the spotlight. He's not gonna let anybody else come in. It's like with Overhaul, he was like, hey, there could only be one of us, and guess what? You're screwed now. I took away your arms. You can't use your quirk. In Heroes Rising, also at the end, it's like I know the canon status of that movie is like kind of a conflict among fans, but at the end there, Nine is like, there can only be one king of the underworld or whatever. And Shigaraki is like, yes, only one, and he kills him. And again in PLW, he keeps saying to the All For One vestige inside him is like, look, I'm thankful for all your help, but this is my show.
He straight up says, I don't want to be you. I intend to surpass you. That's not happening if we're working together. You didn't have a buddy.
Yeah.
Like,
so like that eventual confrontation, that's going to determine who final boss is, if it is truly All For One or if it is Shigaraki, because I'm telling you right now, only one of them comes out on top. It's a Sith relationship. One has the power, one craves it. So, and the succession of Sith is the apprentice kills the master, becomes the new master, and then takes on the apprentice. But the way MHA works and All For One kind of seems like, if Shigaraki were to take that power, he's never going to pass it on because he now has the body to just live forever. Like, why would you need to find an apprentice?
Yeah, there's no reason for him to do that now. Absolute zero reason for him to be like, here, have this kid. Outside of boredom. So he'd have to have effectively a change of heart to want to raise up a new villain. Or he'd have to, evolve to a state where he found it more burdensome to exist, which doesn't really matter. He's got a post-singularity body now. He's just going to be stuck living. So he would probably go inactive, if anything. Yeah. Seal himself away like a true demon king.
Yeah.
Also, real quick, I got to hit this super chat up from Mr. Andrew. Thoughts on the racism art? Confused as why people wanted the mutants to attack innocent hospital. Maybe Horishi introduced an evil human so they could have killed them, that person, to satisfy the fans. The reason why people don't like the idea of the mutant thing is because, and I'm trying to find a very nice way to say this, a lot of people who are more privileged than they realize have started identifying and understanding that they are oppressed in some ways, but they didn't realize they experienced any oppression really until they were like 20, 25. So in turn, they don't understand it as a state that you live under and you have to overcome or find ways around, and understand how rigged the game actually is against you. And so those people who don't understand just how rigged the game is don't realize that respectability politics is really propaganda warfare. You have to fight information or misinformation with information. You can't just kill people to get misinformation to stop. So people who don't want to play the political game, which I understand not wanting to play the political game, don't understand these people having the decency to understand harming people who have nothing to do with our objective will do nothing good for us in the long term. And that's not even really respectability politics. That's just using your head. If I kill a stranger because I'm mad at you, that doesn't really hurt you. Like if you're somebody who's willing to exploit, lie, cheat, push misinformation and all this other stuff, and I kill a random person at a hospital, you're not going to see that as not like, oh, damn, that mutant is dangerous, and therefore I should give them what they want. What we've seen as is this is proof of what we've been saying, that those mutants are dangerous, and therefore we can keep doing what we've been doing. And in fact, we should do it harder. And people who are in the same group as that person is going to feel the same way. Because now, before, if there's somebody said, well, this is confined to these people against each other, this is confined to these demographics, you've effectively handed them objective proof that they can cite whenever they want to and say, this is the event that we're referencing. This is why we don't want this to ever happen again. The best example of political spin is the war in Iraq and 9/11, because a lot of us are from the US.
Oh,
do you guys remember the 9/11 catchphrase? Never again. So if you grew up in the US and even Canada, I think you guys probably at least got hit with some of our never again nonsense.
We did.
Never again, never again, never again. That. And one of the things that it also did is, and one of the funny things is, there was a stand-up special that I was watching way back in like 2006. And I think it was Chris Rock, but he was talking about how people will say that like 9/11 was one of the greatest tragedies, but it also united the nation. Because people were like, I'm American, man. I'm American. Oh, man, fuck these other people. Like, it's about America. They attacked us. Da, 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 da. And people were like, oh, that's unifying. But what it also did was create like an intense amount of hatred for Middle Eastern residents that lived in the United States. All of a sudden, if you had a hijab or you just worked in a gas station or anything else like that, you were being hit with slurs, you were being chased out of town, you were being assaulted because of something somebody did in New York. Now you, the Middle Eastern man living in Texas, or the Middle Eastern woman living in Chicago, or the Middle Eastern man living in Indianapolis or wherever, your life is now in danger because instead of them saying this was a specific terrorist organization, they're saying things like, we're about to take out the Middle East. We're going to create peace in the Middle East. We're going to solve their problems. When the irony here is that we went to war in Iraq, Afghanistan, and did a couple of other places, hit a couple other places along the way. But the attack on Iraq was just us doing that because Osama bin Laden was in Afghanistan and he was supposed to be the one that engineered that attack. So you kind of realize a lot of people don't understand just how important information warfare is. And because they don't understand information warfare, they don't understand why it's important for them to not have killed random people.
Yeah.
Basically, and as Alves said, shout out to Japanese Americans in the 40s because we had them in concentration camps too.
Shit, right. I grew up in the 9/11 further and rage, and Canada was kind of the US's closest ally in that, and we as well went over accompanying you guys into the Middle East. But the real reason Bush did that, you guys want to know why? Their oil.
Because we had established and actually helped Saddam Hussein get power back during his dad's presidency.
Yeah. That as well. That was a big reason. So it was, as much as it was a tragedy, ultimately the US used it as an opportunity to sort of tie loose ends. But at the same time, we're still over there, right?
Yeah.
So, and I know Biden has vowed to like slowly pull us out, but we've heard that before, and they never do it because it's really. I'm going to tell you this right now: the Middle East invasion is the main reason that the United States military budget is so grossly over budget. Trillions and trillions of dollars poured into this in a military industrial complex. And that keeps jobs going and whatnot. And so they kind of got you by the balls where if we say we're going to stay there, we're going to stay there. And even if we say we're going to leave, we're still going to stay there because that's your job.
And there's also the fact that Lockheed Martin and several of these other companies have government contracts. Yep. And they're also publicly traded, which means that when we're at war, their stock profiles go up, which means we also, like the second they put in less orders for jets, the second they do any less violence than what they did to build up that portfolio, they now have to worry about losing funding from people who donate to their campaigns. Yeah. So you kind of have to, this is part of the reason why corporate money being in politics is very, very horrible for us in the US, because it stops things from getting resolved solely to fix or fit things to a specific company and make them happy. This is kind of why, like, same applies to marijuana laws, honestly. Like certain states, you notice that they're starting to get on board, but it's after people who are big business are able to buy into that instead of it being a bunch of small businesses popping up.
Yeah. And more than that, like, I think the point of like people have said like, oh, why didn't they do the racism arc earlier? In a perfect world, I would have liked this to be a even more fleshed out part of the story. But I'm going to be honest, man. The past couple months, the reactions, I'm just convinced MHA fans are not smart enough for this. Also, they're not smart. They're not smart enough for this to be more than 4 or 5 chapters. I'm sorry.
And here's my thing, right? Is that one of the things that I've said a lot of people need to do, and I've had arguments with people about this, and I was like, no, if you look back, a lot of what you experience in this story and interactions are what we would call casual racism or casual discriminatory remarks in real life. It's just that, like, if you called every woman you saw like a hijabi, like if you kept calling women who had hijabs, hey, hijabi, you'd be like, well, that's a little weird and kind of rude. So what? So Bakugo calling Mina raccoon eyes is weird and kind of rude. And so when you realize that, it's like you can't ignore that people casually throw out these insults. And I've even had people be like, well, that doesn't really count. Like, and I'm like, that's exactly the issue that people find in everyday life. People will casually say something that's like an offhand remark that's kind of racist. Like when you really think about it, it's kind of discriminatory. It's a little.
But Bakugo saying Ori-sama in the anime original scenes is too much, Aniki. Don't you get it? That's too rude for him.
Mm-hmm. Like, same with like Shoto calling somebody a mutt. They're like, well, he is part dog. It's like, you've entirely missed the point now, because at the end of the day, that is still a human. And so it's like what ends up happening is that a lot of these people do the very behaviors that are bad in this manga in their daily lives. And in turn, they were incapable of even questioning, is that a little fucked up? Yeah. So then they get here and they're like, this is completely, I don't understand. How could you come to this conclusion? This is, whoa, I never would have thought. It's like, bro, we had a My Hero KKK that even if it was less powerful, was still active.
Yeah, they have their heads on pikes in the past few chapters.
To put this into context for you, Janesville, Wisconsin, about like I think 2 to 3 hours east of where I live, or no, west of where I live, is, from what I can remember, basically one of the KKK capitals of Wisconsin. Huge, good number of Ku Klux Klan members out there. Now, have I ever had to worry about the Ku Klux Klan pulling up and burning a cross on my lawn? No, they're less active today. But when Donald Trump was elected, when all these other things have happened in the past 6-7 years, these anti-Black Lives Matters protests, the Ku Klux Klan has made it very clear they are still active. In fact, David Duke, who is, I believe, he's a previous Arch Grand Wizard or whatever the term is for the head of the KKK, made it a point to come out and be like, we're not that bad. Come on, guys. And like, give Donald Trump a thumbs up. And I think that was back in like 2016. These groups are still active today, just because they have slightly less presence. And depending on if you look harder and find out which jobs they're working, they still have pretty important roles. You got KKK members becoming police officers in Black neighborhoods. You think that's going to end well for Black people? No. So you have these people who technically live out in the country, out in the boonies, whatever, and then they're going out of their way to go arrest other people or find a way to exert extra power over them that they feel like they should have. And when you recognize that, then you understand, like, oh, offhanded comments in the city means actual discrimination out in the country almost every time. You will never meet somebody who's like, yeah, I had some experiences, some like kind of racist experiences out in the city, so I definitely want to go live out in the country with people who are never around Black people. You're not going to meet that guy. And if you do, he's probably very anti-Black. That's just kind of like the reality of the situation, because a lot of people want to use those comparisons IRL. So I'll give you some of them to help you understand what's being set up here, even though this is still a primary like Japanese perspective. And I would say we should be going with like Gaijin or foreigners, but it's easier to give you one that I can explain from a perspective that I've lived and dealt with. And Andrew Super Chat came in, Aniki, you can't have a revolution without violence. Now, this actually isn't as controversial a take as people like to think it is, because you do actually have to break some shit to almost ever get anything done if you're not rich. That is a sad fact of the US. Like, people often attribute MLK's assassination to laws getting changed, when in reality it was his assassination followed by about a week and a half of riots, where people were like, oh, people who are willing to be peaceful have now exploded, and we should probably do something about that. Like, that's it. So you do kind of end up having to break shit, but you have to break the right shit. And that's why, for example, like, there's a reason why the January 6th riot took place where it took place. Because even though those same people will tell you that a BLM protest that's peaceful was terrible and stupid, and they'll say all these bad things about it, they chose to riot where they chose to riot because they were trying to put the most fear in the government that they possibly could. And that's kind of the difference. One party is negotiating out of good faith and hopes of reaching an understanding. The other one is looking for fear, dominion, and to exert power. And that's what you saw. Then that's what you're seeing when you see those two. So, and that's why this mob is, for all intents and purposes, misdirected to attack innocents and then doesn't. Whereas that mob went ahead and attacked as many people as possible, and some had to get put down. R.I.P. Ashley, you deserved it. But yeah, so, and I'm going to be real, if a lot of the people I've seen talk about this stuff on Twitter have not made even close to nuance, or like, because this is a prickly topic, but when I just see, oh, I think it's bad, without any of this discourse surrounding it, what it tells to me is that this person either doesn't deal with or hasn't put a lot of actual thought into what the intent was, just what they thought it should be or how they thought it should be executed, without any consideration for the mindset behind it.
Well, All
Which
for One
is
was controlling that whole thing as
exactly.
well. It's like basically the mutants kind of all the mutant people knew was like, oh, we're going to be attacking the hospital because that's where the stronghold is, and then they actually see the hospital staff and they realize no, people are actually inside. And they're like, okay, this isn't really going to do anything because remember, Spinner also just like fucks off into another direction as soon as they get inside.
Yep.
Like they don't know where he's going. He hasn't communicated that. He just runs off to Kurogiri. And then the rest of them are just kind of standing around in the foyer feeling like idiots. They're like, well, I guess that's it.
Yeah,
You
they
know?
were like, "Oh no, this is us. We're being manipulated. We can't do this. This is wrong. We know this is wrong."
And I think people are also misconstruing the point. It's like, oh well, he says that uh peaceful resolution is the only way every time. It's like that's the exact opposite of what Shoji says, though. It's like he says,
Yep.
no, use that anger. There is a time and place for violence, but this isn't really gonna do anything. And he also thinks back to Yama, when he was being manipulated because they're just being manipulated by All for One in the end. This is a microcosm of a larger issue in MHA's world that's used specifically for this final battle. Maybe in like follow-up material, Horikoshi expands more on it, but I think for this specifically, it was effectively just another tool for Spinner to get to Kurogiri and give the villains their second wind. So
I also think that it was a good way to kind of. So Mello and I kind of had like a debate where we were talking about the arc and stuff, and how I was saying about Deku Far From Home, and how I was saying I wouldn't have wanted Deku to find the solution all out on his own anyway, because that contradicts the point of his journey if he can reach all those correct conclusions on his own. But the other thing is that some of these problems are just objectively bigger than Deku.
yeah,
Deku and All for One, like, while that beef is important to the state of the world from a physical violence, from a warfare standpoint, sociologically, Deku means almost nothing to the average citizen. He's just another hero. And that's part of why 1A basically says you're not the main character. It doesn't, and people are like, well, I don't get it. It's because for our perspective and our story reading, Deku is the main character. But if we're going to treat MHA as its own world, then in this society, there is no main character. And trying to have a main character, i.e. All Might, was detrimental to society as far as the way heroes operated and the way people got complacent and how it enhanced the bystander effect. So this issue being bigger than Deku, and I'm actually going to take this moment to once again bring up what I think was the best moment in Black Clover. It was during the Elf War arc where Asta outright states, I am not smart enough to solve all these issues. But if I can at least stop this war, people smarter than me or better than me at this stuff can come together and find a solution. I'm paraphrasing, but that was the heart of what he was saying. He is a 16-year-old kid. He is not qualified to be trying to come up with the solutions that'll save the world. And therefore, he will do his best to create a path for people who are qualified to get that part done.
The shonen, like I think shonen MCs are best like handled where they're like, hey, I'm gonna do the heavy work and I'm gonna throw some hands, or I'm gonna be super smart or whatnot. But acknowledge that it is a group effort, because that's really kind of the ethos of shonen series, that people do come together. Friendship is power and all that. But I think it's best when it's made into a more practical sense, because I mean it's cheesy and cliche, but friendship is how you get things done in the real world. So
and I think that's kind of a point that slowly and very often gets overlooked, and people have critiqued the US and Canada. Since you're so close to us, you get wrapped up in a lot of our cultural stuff too, even if you don't intend to. were a lot more individualistic, which in turn leads to people rejecting stories or finding it just campy to be like, yeah, no, you got to work together. The irony to this is that most of the wealthiest people in our nations had a good chunk of quality help to get there, whether they want to admit it or not.
Jeff Bezos would tell you that he built his empire from nothing out of a bookshop in his garage. His parents were effing rich, man. They were rich.
They handed him a couple $100K.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that was, what was that, the 90s? So let's say 100, which I think 100K in, let's see, 1990, where's today? Yeah, let's go. It's about $228,012.24. So almost $250,000 in today's currency was given to Jeff Bezos at minimum. Which also means that when Donald Trump says he got a small loan of $1 million, which he's been in the game, I think, longer than Bezos. So let's see, when did Trump get that $1 million?
Was his father in real estate too?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because he claims that he got that $1 million loan from his father. But the issue with that is that $1 million in the 80s is a lot today. Like, all right, we'll just go.
I've joked about this with family and friends. We're gonna get to a point where being a millionaire is no longer a big deal. It's just the way our economy works.
Yeah.
And you'll effectively be called a poor man's millionaire or whatnot, because unless you have $10 million, you won't be able to afford even some nice stuff. You'll just be like middle class, which is insane. But
that's when you think about it, that's the same for countries where, for example, Japan, where it's like, this is 500 yen, translation, $5.
Yeah.
Like Charlotte Kalikuri's bounty in One Piece was 1,057,000,000 berries, which berries just translate to yen. That's $9 million in the US. So having, like $1 billion dollars in Japan or 1 billion yen is only having a couple million. It's inevitable, with the way the number games work. Open Joseph Ciola coming through with a super chat. Even the Hero Safety Commission realized having a single pillar was a mistake. They realized it too late, but they did realize it. And just looking at Trump starting his empire in like 1980, that $1 million loan would have been 3,616,650.49 today. So just regardless, it's a crazy amount of money being thrown around. And that's help. That's working with other people. And the thing is that it's not bad for your family to help you get somewhere in life. That's not the bad part. The issue becomes pretending like you don't get help and that anybody who might also want help is inferior to you because of it. Like, sorry, but that's kind of why it's important to have these stories and acknowledge people get to the high points that they get to because they meet the right people. If they're a sports athlete, they have a good coach. They have somebody willing to give them the space to practice. They have something that helps them get up. Just like All Might met Deku, and he's like, hey, look, your determination, your character, all that makes you who you are as a person. This quirk is something to help you do what you always wanted to do and who you could always be. This quirk and is effectively an investment to help you reach your full potential. So if Deku was coming out here saying, I'm a self-made hero, after receiving that investment, we'd all be like, nah, dude. And to a certain degree, that's kind of what All Might was going to try to get him to do. Be like, yeah, I'm a self-made hero. I'm that guy. And if we're completely honest, that's kind of what All Might did. He got an important power. Somebody made an investment in him. And then he was like, I'm a self-made millionaire.
Annika, your point about people in the fandom sort of like using dumb terminology. I got into a weird interaction yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
You saw this?
Oh yeah.
Or like the other night, and like it was this Bakudeku fan who was insisting that is Ochako and well, Deku didn't have feelings for Ochako, and me not knowing better and not being able to tolerate idiocy right under my nose kept sort of fighting them and being like, no, blatantly he has a crush on her. And somehow they ended up with an analogy of, let me find the tweet.
I believe they said, no, this poll isn't good because, for example, let's say in my town, we did a poll on racism. So, for example, my town has 15 people, 5 of them are white and 10 of them are black, but we only polled the 5 white people about racism. Are you going to take that as a good poll? And it's like, how did you get there from talking about your shit? Like, how do we get there?
Oh, I was so taken aback. I was just like, okay, like just what I want to believe that I will at least get a halfway intelligent conversation in about this stuff. Every time somebody out of the word just smacks me across the face with the stupidest fucking analogy you have ever heard. Every time. It's just I don't know, man. I just don't know.
It's genuinely that terminally online behavior and constantly getting exposed to an idea or like the concept of, I'm trying to figure out a nice way to put it. They spend so much time online that and absorbing these concepts of like, this is that, these are comparable, da 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 da. But as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the people who make these weird points or like have a lot to say don't actually have a lot of experience. And without experience, there is no wisdom. With no wisdom, there is no context. And with no context, there is no contextualization. So to the inexperienced mind, that comparison is totally valid.
Yeah.
Even if you're 26, you can be inexperienced.
Oh yeah. Like one of my friends, his roommate is just like a complete dunce, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he doesn't have like a condition or anything. He's legit just an idiot, and he screws up. Like, you know, set fire to our whole apartment a few weeks ago. And it was like,
yikes.
Yeah, like not by accident either. Well, okay, it was by accident, but like not an easy accident, you know, where it can happen to anybody. It was legit him not knowing how to cook grilled cheese. I shit you not. Mm-hmm. This sitcom ass Saturday Night Live concept is why the apartment almost burned down.
That's so sad. Like, these adults that just can't adult.
Oh, they can't even child. Grilled cheese is a thing you learn as a kid.
Like, burn, and that's not the first time I've heard of that. Like, I knew somebody whose ex-husband actually let their apartment catching on fire because they were like pouring hand sanitizer everywhere to clean everything up every day. And I think they did it while like smoking or something, and actually caused the apartment to catch on fire. It's like, dude, you're pouring like 99% alcohol everywhere with a cigarette in your mouth. Maybe maybe consider that that's dangerous as shit. And only one should be done at a time. Man. Is the lovable idiot like the one where he doesn't mean it but can't help? So this is gonna sound bad, but the lovable idiot trope is one of those ones that I'm like, I don't have any like hyper lovable idiots in my life. If I find you to consistently do a lot of dumb stuff, you end up being a small doses person for me.
Yeah, I mean, like the only times I've really seen that trope work is when the idiot is competent in other areas, or like their idiocy is just like normal. Like I'm playing Persona 5 again right now, and Ryuji in that game is definitely an idiot, but he's also a star track athlete, or at least he was, and he also clearly is provides a lot of morale for the group. It's like he's very useful. So
Yeah.
like I wouldn't really consider him like a full-on idiot, just like a little slow, you know.
And I think you could maybe make that case for Denji, but Denji is also a giant ball of trauma, which makes it a different type of interaction because you just want to root for the guy because all of his ignorance is born out of, how do we put it, outright not being educated.
Denji's actually crafty
like,
as shit. Like,
yeah. Like,
did you read the last chapter? Like
oh wait, I might have missed the last one. Let me see. But like, it's like, can Denji be dumb? Yes, but is Denji actually like? But at least Denji has total reasons for it. Like I've explained to somebody, every now and then Luffy will have a moment that makes you wonder if how he even knows how to wipe his own ass. You don't get that with Denji necessarily. Like, oh, and I have not read this chapter.
Like Denji's horniness, as much as it's played for like laughs and fan service, ultimately that comes from him never really receiving any real support in his life. And that's why he clings so hard to Makima as like both a love interest and a sort of mother figure in this weird Freudian Oedipal Rex kind of way. Like he has to accept at the end of part 1 that they're the only person he can really count on is himself, and so he has to be better for Nayuta. Okay, this is going into spoilers, but
yeah.
Anyway, you get my point.
Yeah. No. Luffy did grow up in the wood, but he also has people around him that tried to teach him. And people will try to be like, hey, Luffy, you want me to read this newspaper to you? And he's like, no. So with Luffy, I'm like, all right, bro, I'm gonna need you to get it together. You done seen the world. I need you to at least put a little more thought into what you do. But for some people, that's the ultimate concept of freedom. And I'm like, I don't know if I can consider that freedom. Not thinking things through, to me, isn't freedom. That's just recklessness.
Good morning, guys.
Hey, how you doing?
Happy post-Thanksgiving.
Oh, happy post-Thanksgiving to you too. You as well, Bolt. All right, what were your thoughts on this chapter, Seth, since you popped in?
Yeah, sorry for being late.
Oh, no, you're good, you're good.
Yeah, no, I really like this chapter, honestly. Like, I like a lot of the chapters. Like, I like most chapters, every other chapter at least. This was a good chapter, obviously. It was insane. It reminded me of the war arc, just with how incredible this development is. Just the idea that now Kurogiri is actually working with All for One. There were a lot of just the amount of interactions that are now set up is just incredible, and I wasn't counting on any of them because, I mean, I had no real reason to actually expect the universe would bend like this. But of course, leave it to a comic book author or comic book fan, I should say, to really start messing with the setup this late into the game. So I was extremely satisfied, to say the least. and also terrified because holy shit, twice. Like,
Well,
oh my
and
gosh.
so this is something that, you know, we've talked about for a while, and I think you've seen me tweet about it a couple times, of course, but I've said it once, I'll say it again and again. I laugh in the face of anyone who actually believed oh yeah, I'll be done with this in a year. Like every time. Because I'd never believed it. And I was like, I guess it's possible, but I doubt it.
He could keep writing for at least another year easily with everything going on. Like, there are just tons of ways that this could drag out longer than he expects. And so I'm happy with that. I was never like sure myself one way or another. I didn't want to doubt his ability to like end it in a year because I think there were pacing decisions he made that were really quick. But at the same time, he has never actually ended a series before. This is his first series that has ever gone on this long, and it has been this successful. His other series were canceled. So this is Horikoshi Sensei's first time, you know, ending a series and on his terms. So I was respectful of his decision because, you know, it's his time, his life, his energy and stuff, but also, you know, healthy skepticism because it's like, you've never done this before, my guy. So we'll see. So it looks like things are in fact dragging out. And I'm very happy with that. Gosh.
One of the things that Volk and I talked about earlier was nothing about the established precedent of the manga and his writing should have let people believe it was going to be over this year, especially when they saw how easy some of the early stuff was.
Yeah, I think that he can definitely. I mean, I know people talk about the Dark Deku arc and the pacing decisions he made there, and so I'm like, well, I guess he can resolve things really quickly if he wants to, but I think his inner manga, his own just inner fanboy is like, I can't do it like this. It has to be more like this, and the more he does that, the longer it gets. So I think he had more of that energy maybe a year ago to be like, okay, I gotta start wrapping this up. But as it goes, it's like, okay, no, let's do this. And freaking no, the twice thing really just freaks me out. Like, I'm actually embarrassed because it's like it makes me feel 12 because I know like the heroes aren't gonna really lose. Like, I still do not believe in part 2, sorry, but like to me the heroes are gonna win. And it's like, but to see that, and it's like, at what cost? And it's like, I have a whole bunch of my favorite characters are literally right there with All for One, and then here comes Twice with the post-mortem murder agenda here going Hawks, and I'm like, I'm losing it. Like, oh no. I don't believe in the bad end, but I'm like scared for all these characters. It's like, shoot, man, I'm not 12 or anything, but like, damn.
Well, so here's the thing, right? Is that you saw Jiro get her ear ripped off before this phase. Twice came in here, as Volk kindly pointed out, holding part of Sue's mask.
No, like what even like also like what's going on with Uraraka too? It's like, okay, is she like, I know I mean she and Deku are endgame, but like, is she okay? Like, this is such a great twist, okay? Because this is like, you have the Kurogiri thing, which is just an obvious telegraphed kind of shakeup. Like, yeah, he could have been Shirakumo, he could have been like, nah, Spinner, sorry, we can't do this thing. But like, and that would be a way to like, you know, make things end earlier, I guess. But nah, first he does the huge shakeup, which is just warp everyone everywhere. Like, okay, now Dobby is over there. It's like, that's insane. But the fact that Twice shows up as well, that is just such an excellent surprise twist to just drop, because we hadn't seen any of the Uraraka Toga fight at all since Deku left. So no, I really love the Twice entrance as much as I'm like just terrified. No, stay dead.
Well, and
get back in there.
One of my favorite things about it is it's it's a twist with the medium in mind. And this is one of those things that I think sometimes
Yes.
hurts the anime's, like people, manga readers' perception of the anime, because sometimes there's stuff that Hori does specifically that doesn't matter as much in the anime. But in this case, if you're reading this manga, you would be turning the page, you see, hey, dad, on the left side, and then you turn the page and you see, oh, Hawks.
You know what's crazy? I bet when they was watching the news reporter, they was like, "Oh no, she going crazy." I wonder if like believing like quirk doomsday theories, like being anti-vax in MHA's world, or, like
Which
people
would be
sticking
ironic
for
because
it. They're like, "Oh no, she's on her Kyrie Irving arc. No, get her off the air."
I definitely think some people are very anti-quirk singularity theory, and if you think about it, it makes sense to be skeptical in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of these quirks weren't anything special. Like the second user's quirk could make projectiles go bird.
Big brr.
Not a big deal. Like the first person was just a bioluminescent baby. Not a big deal.
You know, just like
Even
light work,
modern
really light.
quirks, it's like half and half and not even, because I think one of the things that we kind of forget is that UA and a lot of the heroes, even the heroes whose quirks we find to be kind of mediocre, have comparatively top tier quirks to the average person in society. So most of the quirks we're focusing on are in the top 90th percentile, realistically, and above. So, because think back to Deku's class at the beginning. Besides Bakugo, I think there was only like 4 people that I saw that I was like, yeah, that person could be a hero. Like, let me see. They got more than one right here, so why not? Right. Well, you know. Also, shout out to Anna for sending stuff off the baby registry. Our Gene Bean will appreciate that in the future. Don't want to forget to say my thanks.
Stay hydrated though. It's very important in terms of nutrition.
Oh yes, definitely. Let's see if
So,
I can. So let's see.
You know, make sure you're drinking water, everything like that.
We had, okay, so of the people in this class, because now I got the volume pulled up, so we can look at this. So one dude who's the one that eventually hangs out with Bakugo just has long fingers. That's his
you
quirk.
can poke somebody with that.
Then you got the dude that can pull his eyeballs out.
You can like beat someone up with it. Use your eyes as like a mace. Like,
okay,
I mean, for the
like
kid that has long fingers, there's a niche for that.
Oh Lord, a proctologist. You're right.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
It looks like there's actually a kid in the background who can make a small black hole, but I'm not sure if that's what it was going for or not. You got a kid with a spiky fist. There's some viability in that. You have the kid with the rock hand.
Beat someone up with it.
A girl with really low scale telekinesis.
You can throw pencils at somebody, like really irritate the burglar, and then like another hero comes in. Like that's a good sidekick ability.
You got a mini muscular in the class at least.
He can play, D1. Yeah.
One kid's arm is a flamethrower. That had potential. It was like a mega
genuine hero ability.
Yeah. Another kid just has a weird face. One of them just has a set of chompers, which I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be running around biting people. You got a giraffe neck nigga.
He could play basketball.
So some of these people had quirks that make sense. I mean, the dude could sharpen his hair to point upwards maybe had some potential, but doubt it. And the guy whose quirk was just looking like he has an allergic reaction. Nah.
but I feel like we're kind of like we're looking at these like abilities not as not really taking into context that they're undeveloped. I mean, if you look at Kirishima, Kirishima got that dog in him, but at the start of middle school, his hardening stuff didn't really go that far. He hardened up a little, but you could still hurt the guy with regular stuff. And now in like middle school, he got his in high school, he got his unbreakable, and like he's
of course,
he's
like
crazy
all
hard to damage
quirks
now.
have potential. It's just you got to realize like some of these people's quirks really are just kind of, and that's okay, because like that's part of what leads to people not being as concerned about it. But the second, hell, honestly, the second an NG shows up, it's like, wait,
moving on to
that could be a
different
little
leagues, okay?
spicy. You get, but like now that you have a Shoto here, or like you have Bakugo quirks, you have hell, even Uraraka's quirk when you think about it, because of how easy it is to just accidentally, you know, like let's say, especially as she gets stronger, she just accidentally taps the car. Oops. And yes, Cameron Bailey, if MHA were to get a part 2, I think Quirk Singularity Doomsday would be one of the biggest components of the plot, like hands down. If for nothing else, because they'd have to deal with more and more people that have these high tier quirks. Like it would no longer be, oh, you got Shoto in the class and you got Tailman. It would be,
you know what's crazy?
You got 7 Shotos, 4 Bakugos, 3 Momos, another 3
4
Itos,
Aries,
like stuff like that.
It's crazy. But you know what's crazy? Look at Toya. Everybody tired. Everybody weak. But Toya, he's burning alive. He still got that dog in him. You can see it right there in the panels.
Well, they also drew attention to the fact that, hey, he shouldn't be moving right now. His body shouldn't be able to do that. So
no, bro, he's just a hater. Listen, he listens to Andrew Tate, okay? The hate he has is infinite, okay?
Oh my god.
Oh Jesus. No, All For One definitely gave him a little extra something when he was
all he had to think about was the 20th Amendment and he was set. Okay?
Oh my goodness.
He gave him a little extra something. Not toxic masculinity, since Dabi already has plenty of that.
He got that from Reddit. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I was gonna say when we saw Toya basically go, I don't want another quirk. I don't think All For One would have went, okay, fair enough, and moved on. I feel like you're right. He did give him a new quirk, just without his consent.
I mean, that is something I could see All For One doing, but in this case, I think the point of Dabi's character is that nobody actually gets to tell him what to do. Nobody gets that influence or control over him. He lives and dies how he chooses.
That Dabi's taste like beef jerky now. Like you can just put him on a plate.
I mean, he's worse than beef jerky at this point.
That is a question.
You can't even saute it.
Like, because we saw that like part of his musculature had carbonized and broken away. This is his final battle no matter what. And the way I look at it is that the only way I see him surviving is if basically somebody pulls, like if All For One like pulls the quirk off a Nomu, like the regen quirk, and then just forces it on him.
That's crazy.
Well,
and even then, I don't think that would work.
Regen only works on injuries taken after you get the quirk.
Yeah, so I don't think he can do anything for him anyway.
That's the reason All For One didn't try to, like rebuild his body, or at least part of the reason.
After All For One, after All Might, just clapped him. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's like it just doesn't work that way.
There's a little 10 chapters with him alive. That's it.
Dabi? I'll say 20.
It'll come down to how the fight is spaced out. Because if we sit here and we focus on Dabi, he could be dead as fast as 5 chapters. If it becomes like Dabi versus Endeavor, the final battle.
I also think next week we're not going to be following any of this. I think we're rewinding the clock again to versus Token.
We're going to go see what happened with Ochako and Token. And Sue. We're going to see if Sue is dead on the deathbed.
Not even next week, 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, correct. We're so that's where the focus is gonna be next 2 weeks from now.
Look, I'm
next chapter.
Look, man, I'm just happy Twice finally gets to get his lick back, okay? After the way your Hawks did him, nah, we gotta run
Oh,
it back.
I just know
Round two.
that East was cutting up in the VC that he was in this week. Because I don't do the spoiler talk, so I wasn't there for that. But I just know East was like ecstatic to have his boy back.
Like, you know, like
Like the way it works
I'm
though is
really
like
rooting for it.
you have Toga who, copied herself into Twice, but she can create a bunch of Twice clones like the actual Twice, so that is effectively him.
Yeah. No, and what's interesting about this is that the Twice clone memory base is dependent on the creator of the clone. So Twice coming out this portal yelling, "Oh, Hawks," just like during MVA when he was like, I don't have to worry about whether I'm real or fake and disappearing. I can go all out and create these other clones. We now have, I can go all out. I know I'm fake. And
about to catch this fade. That's crazy.
Yeah, like I'm just gonna go all out. Either way, I disappear eventually. It's only a matter of time. So this is a Twice who will have completely accepted death more than likely. Whereas
that means everything is on the table.
Right. Whereas before he always had something to like fight back for. But now, shit. Now we get Twice effectively about to drop a bunch of hymns. And what I think is interesting and what could be set up here is for a single Twice clone to still escape.
Just to live out there in the world.
Yep.
I can
It's
rock with
possible.
that.
Clones don't go away until they're dealt with. Like
I think there's at least one Twice clone that's going to escape, and that will make the story make sense because it is all a narration from the future. And one of the things that I always said was that I think the characters who narrate largely aren't supposed to die. Deku narrates from the future. Bakugo narrates from the future. Spinner narrated from the future. We got a couple Twice narrations. So I think characters who narrate are supposed to still be alive.
I am a fan of the no one dies theory. Just, like everyone's talking about who should die, and I'm like, you know what? No one.
What about
people?
Well,
Shigaraki's episode of
Dr.
Dr. Phil if Toya survives though. Like, bro, that'd be a crazy episode.
Here's the thing about narration. I think we got Shigaraki's internal thoughts during MVA because that's just part of the story. I don't think we've ever gotten narration from him.
I don't either.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Spinner was the narrator for MVA.
Yep.
Wait. Twice can clone everyone in the league, actually. So, I don't know.
Technically, yeah, he could theoretically bring them all back to life after death. Yeah. But the point would be that I think if there is a world in which Twice lives through this, he's not going to be a villain anymore. He's going to get that chance to reform.
Yeah, I don't personally. I don't think. Well, sorry, I'm cutting everyone off. I don't really see that happening for like the terms of the story, but like in terms of just people surviving. Stupid dogs. In terms of people surviving, I'm down for that.
Whoa, we don't gotta be disrespectful.
As many as possible.
We don't gotta be disrespectful. Come on now.
Yeah, no, it just threw me off. I'm trying to take a walk, and all of a sudden, I am in violation of existence, I guess.
Wait, so I have a question about Twice correct because I don't fully understand this part of it. If Twice creates one clone of each of the characters, right? Would they have the durability of a human, or would they get destroyed if a bone gets broken, for example? Or does that depend on like how many?
Well, they successively get weaker.
So if he makes one clone of Toga, like at the very beginning, would that toga have the durability of a human? So that toga could live on even if the original toga is dead. Is that possible?
Well, we know from Forest Camp, Aizawa had to actually break Dobby's arms
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and then stomp him out, give him that little
Mhm.
2-step,
Mhm.
and then he was out. So, like, it could take a decent amount of damage because, like Aizawa, he was laying people
Mhm.
out back in USJ, with like 1-2 attacks sometimes. So, assuming that they don't get hit with something crazy or with someone with a super strength quirk, probably, yeah.
Wouldn't that mean that Anaki's theory of one twice like escaping, if that's like an early on clone, that twice could essentially have his own life, like
Yeah.
even if he's going off into the wilds and no one sees him ever again.
That could be a spin-off manga.
Yeah, assuming he
It
doesn't
could be
get
a
like
spin-off
mauled by a
manga.
bear or
Exactly.
something like that.
I know this is a conversation back and forth. Like, is there going to be a part 2? Is there not?
Mhm.
I'm still in the camp that a part 2 does not involve the League of Villains beyond the damage they caused. Like if and when you get a sequel, you're going to see the effects that they had, and you're going to see a couple of the survivors pop up.
Mhm.
But I think by necessity, you're going to have to go in a different direction.
Also, I real
Who do you
quick
think
want
should be
to
like
hold on.
part 2 though?
I want to address
I'm
something that I
sorry.
can't believe you've done. This said, clones do start with inferior durability, but Rappa's clone dying from he died from 3 stamps.
Mhm.
But it's also worth noting that that was effectively having a dumbbell thrown into your chest so hard you went flying into a wall.
It wasn't just that. Rappa
That I
isn't
was
close
crazy for
to Twice, right? Like Twice doesn't know Rappa that much compared to Shigaraki or Toga or Compress. I could see that
Ooh.
version of Rappa being very weak compared.
Okay,
That's right.
MK the baby, I see you. What if we're
Well-
all just reading different characters' police reports after the fact?
Oh, that's interesting.
That's
Actually,
crazy.
really
They
like
all
that.
got records. Yo, that's wild.
Man,
Wait, so
Uh,
Deku has a police report? That's
I
insane.
mean, all of them might.
Listen, man, after the war, listen, bro, he had to hit a couple licks. Okay, he had to survive. Okay, like, come
You gotta
on.
remember,
Yeah, sure.
Momo committed war crimes anyway.
Yeah, I could see like the Geneva Conventions and stuff. Like,
Like,
Momo, what you
Yeah,
want
Momo
to
Momo's
do?
did
girl
commit a
for a reason.
crime against Makia, essentially. So you're
and
right.
technically,
I mean, she
Deku's
basically
on a
used a
provisional
chemical.
license, not an actual. From what I understand, he's got a provisional license, not a full blown hero license.
Mhm.
So, technically, the
imagine,
entirety of Dark Deku was him running around, driving with the learner's permit.
Yeah. That's a good comparison.
Like, really think about this, okay? Like, think about this, okay? Like, Momo was basically like the equivalent of like not even like a full on like cop, okay? She's like an intern,
Mhm.
and she decided to like set off a nuke in the middle of a city. I feel like that would be like crazy. That's basically what she did.
Actually, what I appreciate about Momo is that not Mount Lady. Midnight told her to just pass along the sedatives and run. Like Midnight did not actually tell her to hold her ground and fight. She's just
Yeah.
like, okay, make this stuff and get out of Dodge. But no, Momo's like, okay, no one else is here. We got to do this.
Commit this
And
war crime for me,
She
real
takes
quick. player.
charge, and I like that a lot.
Mhm. I
So,
agree.
Commit that
so
war
Cameron
crime for me.
Bailey, in regards to the war crime, gas weapons are actually not supposed to be utilized at all.
Yep.
And so those types of sedatives,
They
more
do,
than
though.
likely, what Midnight thought they were going to use was some form of gas, or and to a certain degree, by making that a liquid, she probably just had like a step below a gas agent, but that still is effectively like chemical warfare, which you're just not supposed to engage in.
You think Midnight
Like
went
Assad
to
did that in Syria, and like people were going crazy off of that, because that was bad. Like they used a sarin nerve gas. That was pretty like war
Yeah,
crime
sarin nerve gas is also what
crazy.
some of this stuff is based off of, because people have tried to make that shit in their basement.
Yeah,
Like I
there's a
don't
reason
even
doctors
like
make these
the amount
scientist
of
paperwork and
equipment
stuff.
you need to like actually make that safe with. You know what? No, I'm not. I'm going too much.
Do you
I
think
mean-
Midnight had to jump through hoops, like a lot of hoops, to be able to use her quirk on the daily?
I think because it was a byproduct of her body and a quirk, she was kind of like an
Mhm.
exception built in. And
That's fair.
Yeah, you are not supposed to use gas weapons in war. That you're also not supposed to use any form of biological warfare. That's why. So I don't know how long you've been around Cameron Bailey, just because I can't remember which. Look, some of you guys have been here a long time. But I don't remember when that long time started.
I remember
Uh,
in the Mongols in history, right? They were trying to capture this one city. I forgot about it. And one of the tactics they used, like they loaded up like I think it was like dead like rats or something like that, and like propelled it over the castle wall, and they basically just infected and killed everybody right there. And then they
Yeah.
took the city. It was pretty
Mhm.
crazy.
well, that, and
Like
that
it
was
wasn't a
something
dub
that
strap, but it was efficient.
people would do that stuff too with like bubonic plague rats. But so the reason why I was saying I don't know how long you've been here, Cameron Bailey, is just because I don't know if you ever watched the My History Academia videos. Back when I was doing a lot more solo content and having more time on my hands. So with the second one, I talked about specifically one of the reasons that quirks could actually be a disease within the context of the series, but specifically I zeroed in on a character who Kyudai Garaki is based in, named Dr. Shiro Ishii. And Dr. Shiro Ishii is also the reason why Kyudai Garaki's original name was Shiga Murata, because of the fact that it was at the Unit 731 compound. In addition to that, the Shiga bacteria is basically an E. coli bacteria that was utilized and kept as a pet by Dr. Shiro Ishii. So one of the things that he did was he took that E. coli and he like mixed it into people, and like they would conduct experiments where they would like vivisect people. That's why the Nomu's organs are all jumbled up. But one of the main things about Shiro Ishii is that he found out that the Geneva Conventions banned things like biological warfare and banned things like gas weapons. And he did not think that they did that for ethical reasons, because he never took a medical ethics course. He only took like courses on like the very functionality. So effectively, he believed in biological warfare and thought it would help. So he, during the Sino-Japanese War, which is going on in conjunction with the World War II,
And like the whole invasion of Manchuria bit, and Indochina, like it was crazy. Like they was wilding.
He purposely would have fleas hop onto different creatures that they had injected with various diseases. Then they would collect the fleas, and then they would just fly over small villages and drop cages filled with those fleas so that they would slowly spread out and just wipe out villages. One of the guys straight up, I remember watching a documentary. He was like, by the time the last adult died, there was no adults left to help bury, like one of the adults died. Like by the time his father died, there were no adults left to help him bury his father. And he was 14 at the time. So certain stuff, because it's considered like unnecessarily cruel, is not allowed in warfare, because the goal is to, like, you're allowed to have your war, but they don't want you to just be wiping people out. One of the things that, for example, I think a lot of people might not know is you're technically supposed to only use hard-nosed bullets in war. No soft noses. You can buy soft nosed bullets as an average everyday citizen, but the reason for this is that a hard-nosed bullet, when you shoot somebody with it, is going to create a through-and-through wound. If you use a soft-nosed bullet,
gets stuck.
Bullet it deforms and creates, like, it flattens as it's hitting the body. And as it goes through your body, it creates a bigger exit hole if it punches through. And even if it doesn't punch through, instead of just being this hole that was, like the size of my finger, it started as that and then spread out. And similar to the functions of an arrowhead, of like when you get shot with an arrow and you have to pull it out and then you can cause more damage pulling it out, it does that. So in order to up the survival rate for people who get shot in war, or people who have the soldiers on the front line, the Geneva Convention is basically a gentleman's agreement to not use certain types of weapons in order to, get through fast, like get through and decrease the amount of fatalities. You'll still have casualties, you'll still have people dying, but it's going to be a little less death. It's also why, like, people don't just nuke people left and right.
You have like we have a mutual agreement.
Like there's
not use nukes.
Nobody uses nukes. Nobody is supposed to even make nukes anymore. That's part of why there was all that. That's why you can kind of say WMDs are a boogeyman, like kind of topic where you can be like, oh, if they have WMDs, and even if you don't have proof of it, a good chunk of countries around the world, especially those in close proximity to that country, are now going to be worried about it.
It was when it comes to WMDs, like the accusation of, I believe, Iraq building WMDs was the main justification after 9/11 to invade.
Yeah, that was 100% the talking point. They have WMDs, they have weapons of mass destruction, and they have yellow cake uranium. That's why there's a Chappelle Show sketch where he's fake Bush and he actually pulls out a slice of yellow cake and it's like, yellow cake right here. It's like,
Yellow cake.
But actually, to go into that more, Cameron Bailey, so you're like, damn, so anyone that has a gas worker would be really hard to become a hero. No wonder Mustard became a villain.
Dude, it'd be hard just to be like a legal citizen. Like, if you go into the military with that quirk, like, bro, you're gonna, like, you might automatically just be committing a war crime just straight off that. Like, that's the thing.
So Horikoshi purposely named mustard that because mustard gas is banned in war. Specifically, mustard gas is one of the ones that was one of the first ones banned, and it was actually very commonly used during World War II in concentration camps on the Jewish people, which, if you remember, mustard also has a revolver, which is kind of shaped like a Ruger, which is a German revolver. So yeah, that was one of the first times that Hori kind of tipped his hand and said, look, we're talking about and examining the issues with war crimes in Japan. And like, think about how Mustard's whole speech and rant and hostility was towards people who he perceived as seeing themselves as better than him because they were more successful. And then look at how one of the things that Germany did was basically say, all right, we're in a recession, economic depression due to the fact that we're paying a bunch of money out due to World War I, which, you know, they were like, technically we didn't say we lost, we just agreed to a ceasefire, so why are we paying reparations back? And so they were basically like impoverished. They ended up printing out a bunch of francs, which made their currency lose even more value.
Like, altogether, like, the economic management was just an L. Like, they was taking mad L's. It was crazy.
And so what they did is that even though a lot of Jewish people were not allowed to own like actual land, they could do financing. And so effectively, this is also where like the super Jews or money hoarding, blah, 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 blah. Like, this is where all that comes from, or a good chunk of this comes from. A lot of places.
Well, it's also the, hold on, can I add something real quick? Well, it also, it's not just outside of, like, strictly like Weimar era Germany. Like, the whole thing about, like, when Europe was like around like the Catholic Church and stuff like that, Jewish people were also heavily discriminated against. But a big thing that was able to like for example, like in banking, right? They were allowed to charge interest on stuff. Catholics weren't allowed to do that. So this has ties all the way back to like the schism. Like, we're talking like 1000s, 1100s, Crusades. Like, this anti-Semitism by a product of Orthodox, Catholic, all that stuff has major ties to Europe. And that was how so much of the a lot of the anti-Semitism was already fostered, but it was focused by the Nazi Party. So I'd like to add that.
Yeah. And so they were working in finance, and basically people who work in money are seldom destroyed the same way people who work in other fields are, even by economic depressions. Because if you have a bunch of loans out, even if it's a recession, even if it's a depression, you're still getting some of those loans paid off. And what's more is that, similar to how Elon Musk lost like 100 billion in value, partially due to him taking big loans, and Tesla stock taking massive hits because of it, because it was leveraged as collateral. Elon's loans still have to get paid, and rich people take these big loans out all the time. In fact, I was watching something about it because I like to watch finance videos sometimes because I have my own investments and I'm trying to build that stuff up. But one of the things that they talked about is how when you have a big enough like portfolio, you can turn around and borrow against it up to 70% of its cash value. And then, so what they tend to do is they buy that portfolio, they get the portfolio, they borrow against it, they buy some building, flip it out to a bunch of condominiums, and then even though the loan requires them to pay like, you know, 3 million a day, or not 3 million a day, but like 3-4 million a month, they buy a building with a bunch of units listed in it or office space, which is part of the reason why everybody has to come back to work in the offices, because it's killing these companies that have these big offices, and then they can downsize. But these real estate companies don't want them to downsize, obviously, because then they're losing less, they're making less money, et cetera. But you get that, and then you make like 10 million a month off of a loan that's going to cost you 4 million a month, and then you get to pocket that other 6 million. And so if, for example, you bought this stuff up, but people aren't necessarily able to pay it, all these rich people were still stuck paying towards their banks and stuff like that. So that's how they got the blame. It's like, you're still financially sound because we forced you into the finance sector. And that's how you have, and so like Mustard being resentful towards all these other people is kind of how we got here. And like that kind of behavior. So him misdirecting his anger with society, and like ultimately you can't use your mustard gas quirk. Yeah, that sucks. But it kills people, dude. And the fact that he was never going to be able to be a hero means he was never going to be able to take his rightful place as a Superman in society. See how that works?
That's crazy.
Like, he was,
Keep that connection. Peep it.
like, he's
Canada
an Uberman.
fucking-
Observe it.
Canada fucking sucks at sports, man.
Let me guess. World Cup.
World Cup.
Hey, low key, Argentina kind of going out sorry. Like they got Messi and all that. and,
4-1!
like, they still got- Like that's crazy. Like,
4-1!
that's crazy. That's crazy.
Okay, well,
I would never be- I would
it could
never
have
be
been
done with
worse,
that.
but like ever since the Raptors won, it's like we sold our soul to the devil, and the trade-off was you cannot win jack shit for another 10 years.
Oh, bro, y'all took so many L's on that one. That was hilarious. Yeah. I was reading like some stuff about like people who are actually going to the games and stuff.
Mhm.
Bro, this is like a real life fire festival. People are like outside. It's like 100 degrees. There's like no restrooms. It's so
I-
bad. Like
All
imagine
I know
going to
is-
Qatar.
I don't understand how people went to Qatar and expected anything other than for Qatar to be Qatar.
it's just okay.
No,
I'll say this,
The
though.
thing with Qatar is that like, okay, so like a lot of these UAE countries, right? They have this big image of wealth, and the thing is they are wealthy because they're basically just giant oil reserves.
What didn't help,
But the thing
though,
with
Hold on.
the
Let Walt
sorry.
go a bit, and then we'll cycle back to
My
it.
bad,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
what didn't help though was our coach said F Croatia and all this shit. So it's like it was just this extra pressure on the team, and God. Well, it's Brazil now. It's all Brazil.
Well, when you throw racism into your World Cup hype speech, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Oof.
crazy.
Oof.
Crazy.
Yeah, so the thing about the UAE is that like in reality they're mostly like slave states. And like for example, Qatar has 10% of its population actually be citizens, which are classified as native Qataris. 90% of the population are immigrants, mostly from Nepal, Bangladesh, and India. And those workers, they're brought under the kafala system, which means that you were essentially sponsored by your employer to work in a country, and you basically have no rights. You can't leave. People straight up haven't gotten paid for months. You have to work in extreme heat. The Qatar summers are known to get as high as like 110, 115 degrees. Very high humidity as well. Like you will straight up die in that heat. You're going to be working exorbitant hours. And Qatar Stadium was built off of that immigrant slave labor. It's known as modern slavery.
I think some of that kind of happens almost every time the Olympics is hosted somewhere too.
Yes,
The Qatar
but
situation
under the
with,
kafala system, it's basically like straight up just slavery.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard it was exponentially worse than just anything else. Like, I think there was comparison, I remember, to Tokyo about the deaths that happened there,
Mhm.
but like it's in the thousands in Qatar. Like, I think in Tokyo you had like maybe 60.
6,500.
Yeah. Like, I think like in Tokyo it was something like 60 people died during the construction of it. And
On
yeah,
the most like well regulated, most monitored like fields, 37 people died, but that's on their best like quality workplaces. 37 people died. Most people, it was the death counts were far higher, and the injury counts and just general casualties were much higher. Like
Yikes.
literally, and then you also have like the whole like women's rights things, and how being gay literally gets you killed and all that, and like
That's
the
what I meant
fact
when I
that-
said I don't know how people went to Qatar and expected it to be anything but Qatar.
like, and then you had and then another big thing was like they weren't supposed to get the World Cup. Like, it's very much implied that like they bribed them for it, especially because they don't have any soccer infrastructure, and Qatar doesn't even have a strong like soccer culture. Like, if you set it up in Saudi Arabia, like, because at this point we're considering all dictatorships, right, and all that stuff.
Mhm.
If you set that up in Saudi Arabia, that would have made more sense because they have a strong footballing culture. If you set that up in like Brazil, even when like Bolsonaro was like president, that would make way more sense. Or Russia, way more sense. But instead, they put it in a place with basically no soccer culture and with no infrastructure, and they basically had to make a city just for this stadium.
That's wild. All right. I want to get us a little back on track just because we've gone,
Yeah.
we've done our classic get way off the rails. So I want to
All I'm gonna say is
real quick, I want to center us back. This looks like Endeavor versus Dobby, which really is a half dead dude against a half dead dude. Now,
I think Dobby is a little more than half dead, but I digress.
well, yeah, but with Dobby, it doesn't matter if he's half dead or 90% dead. He's borderline peaking off being close to death.
I guess as long as you have one life point left, what does it matter?
hey man, the fight's never over until it's over. That just means you a real one. You got heart.
Dobby used Endeavor. He endeavored the attack.
All for One activated his trap card. Black hole.
Like, because my thing with this is we know that if Dobby's going to go to Gunga, which also I guess the question is, do we think AFO is about to get teleported out of Gunga? That's
I
another
think
question.
so. It's right there anyway.
Yeah. So we're running on the assumption that Shigaraki is about to get AFO teleported to him, which means Deku is about to have to fight a 2v1 with no help.
Wait, does that
I
also
can't
mean
even.
that there's going to be twice clones at UA as well, right? Like,
More
I don't
than likely.
see Kurogiri just sending 2 Trice clones to Gunga and just ending it there. I feel like you're going to have a spill of probably hundreds of Trices from Toga's battlefield, which we haven't seen yet. Like, that's going to go everywhere. And just like All For One's, just like All For One said, you're going to see what would happen if you didn't kill Twice or if he wasn't your priority.
Also, Kurogiri is physically at the location with Monoma.
Mm-hmm.
So this does create the ultimate game of keep away potentially. Because if he can retap Kurogiri at the end of the day, if we get all these people dropped into UA, it's not worth it to try to fight anymore. He needs to pull Deku out. He needs to pull Bakugo out, get Genius out, etc. They all need to get out. Yes, it would be nice if he could avoid blinking. But with what's happening here, that's not an option. So unless he's about to go beyond and use 2 quirks at once, which would be a nice reward, we know Monoma's been grinding for a long time. But yeah,
well, think of where UA has been, flying in the sky. It was like it was way up in the clouds when this fight started. You get to where you get to Deku versus All For One. It's drifting very close to the ocean now. It's like only a couple 100 feet up now.
Yeah.
So that's crashing soon. Although we also have to see what they were talking about when they said, "Oh, UA and Shiketsu can now link up." It's like, well, how did they literally turn into like a mega fortress, or is it?
Or were they
be
just talking about that tram system?
I think they were talking about tram system.
Which, damn,
something about trains.
We got the traders in the Shiketsu hideout.
Yeah.
So
okay, so one of the things that was what I was wondering about with Kurogiri was how would he figure out all of the locations everyone, and so I think this works. It makes sense enough. All For One has been in communication with everyone, apparently. He was able to communicate with Dabi, for example, about where he was. He also knew that it was Dabi versus Todoroki from actually way back when he was first monologuing to Endeavor. So it looks like he has actually been in constant communication. They have communicators like how the heroes do. So that makes sense now. So once he connected with Kurogiri via Shigaraki's hand, basically.
I don't know if it's
that is-
I don't know if it's communication. I think he's spying on them somehow. Because remember, remember Lady Nagant as well. Like as soon as Deku, reached out to her, like All For One seemed to know immediately. Like, oh, that's when I blow her up.
That's true, actually. He might have another kind of omnipotent quirk that we aren't fully aware of. Like when he implants quirks with people, he might be able to, know some, like, I'm not sure, like some kind of connection.
And this chapter as well, though, like it's not All For One really telling Dabi like, oh, you're gonna be able to be portaled over to your father. It's the Nomu that's there with him. Why wouldn't All For One just tell him that himself if they're in communication? So I think it's not. I think reflecting All For One's narcissistic narcissism, he doesn't even bother keeping in communication with everybody, and he just keeps tabs on them all and moves them around like it's like they're on a chessboard.
Oh right, Skeptic is there. Skeptic
is there.
Yeah.
He's always
so
keeping
that
an
might
eye
have
on
been
everyone.
Skeptic. And that also makes sense too, actually. Skeptic would be able to pinpoint everyone's locations. So if there is a microchip in that hand, then he would also, I guess, be in tune with whatever's going on with Kurogiri.
Yes.
You know what?
Okay.
It was probably Skeptic that kept All For One up to date on everything. So.
Because Skeptic doesn't care about All For One's agenda. He cares about the benefit to his goals that All For One will ultimately cause or give him.
It's actually insane how many moving parts there are to this, both literally and figuratively. Like just all the stuff that's coming together. Like this is the chaos that I think Horikoshi is best at. Whether it's like the original Forest training arc where everything is chaos there, or whether it's the PLW war arc, or even now, like when everything's chaos, Horikoshi has some of his best stuff.
I think he like this is also why when things pop up again, because they are built in the background, people are so surprised by it, or like, where did this come from? It's like, well, it's always been there. You either forgot about it or you weren't paying attention.
Yeah, the Culture Fest arc actually got a lot better on me when it's like, oh, wait, he really is working with literally everything he's written. So like it's crazy. Regarding the situation with Twice though, I think it's finally Tokoyami's time to shine. Like they've stressed over and over again the dark clouds that are forming and blocking out, everything.
Oh,
And I'm like, I think it's time. It's finally time. And I am ridiculously excited.
you know what? That is a good point. Getting some of which I feel like we've seen Ragnarok just be the summoning of, giant bird form and clogged tunnels. We've seen Ragnarok womb. Are we finally getting the Ragnarok abyssal black body?
We saw
I
him
think
use
so.
it. We saw him use it partially. The phantasm thing, he was using Ragnarok. He wrapped it around his fist, but it was in broad daylight, so he couldn't maintain the form. But now the clouds are all blotted out, so we might actually see full body, what is it, abyssal black Ankh Ragnarok, and it's like, oh my gosh,
Because I feel like up to this point, we've seen literally every character on each battlefield, well, the ones that's been highlighted, do all the stuff they have done. The only exception being Tokoyami, who only had that punch, that smash, and Ida, who hasn't done much. So now that Dabi is gone, I don't think Shoto has the energy to jump through the portal. Ida is right there to bring him to Gunga.
That was predicted on here, by the way. Shout out to whoever did. That was actually, I thought of you immediately here. Like, yeah, someone brought that up here. It's like, okay, someone's going to need to ferry Todoroki all the way over to the new fight location. It's like, I think, yeah, you called it, whoever it was.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter which of us it was, because I'm not exactly sure, but I've kind of been waiting for Ida to have his moment, so it might actually just be him fucking running Shoto to the location, because at first we were considering him having to pull Shoto and get him out of the fight, period.
Yeah.
But now he might have to drag Shoto to the other one because they don't have a teleporter on their side because even if Monoma does get Kurogiri's power, he's not going to be able to focus on any location but where they are currently.
Yeah, I first heard that here, I think, and so I thought of the church chat before anything else. As far as Ida, though, goes, I really like narratively that he's thrown in this battle between brothers. I'm looking forward to seeing what moments Horikoshi can deliver on that, because Ida knows what it's like to have a good brother figure in your life, and obviously Dabi's not it. So I don't know. I'm really looking forward to seeing Ida shine again.
I do feel like Ida hasn't gotten as much shine as he could. And I think we got a good emphasis on his friendship with Deku, because I actually like Class 1A versus Midoriya.
Yeah, I love it. One of the best parts of Deku Black. And
with this, we can kind of get a better emphasis on his friendship with Shoto, because one of the things that I've always said that Shoto and Ida are a best friend pair that is massively underrated.
Yep.
Just because when he's like, "Hey, Shoto, there's something wrong with your face," basically, that's not exactly what he's saying, but he addresses that Shoto's face shows some concern. And you actually have Ojiro right there to comment on the fact that he didn't notice the subtle change in his facial expressions. And so you have the story doing small things to emphasize their bond, just like when they took the goofy pictures together during Culture Festival. So we kind of have their friendship being set up and played into, just like you see Bakugo and Kirishima doing the obstacle course together, and we all acknowledge them as a good pair of friends. So this payoff for Ida, and hopefully during joint training, Ida saved Shoto by, grabbing him and pulling him out of the danger zone. Do we get him bringing Shoto into the danger zone this time? Be a nice change of pace. Would actually give his engine.
For him, actually.
Oh yes, because I do think that even if he gets Shoto to the battlefield, that might be it for his engines for a while, which puts him in a very scary position. Which I also wonder if he's done another clipping since the war.
Wait, clipping as in taking out the engines, right?
Yep.
Okay. I was wondering what does clipping mean. Now it hit me.
Because if he's done another clipping, we could get something real nice out of this. Also, I think I saw some people ask why the US is getting so much emphasis. And it's because there isn't a news broadcast anymore in Japan. I think people are forgetting how much of the infrastructure in Japan is actually down. Like they gotta have like the bare minimums. Like who's gonna be sitting in a news station when Muscular was doing what he was doing?
Yeah, at best we have YouTube conspiracy theorists and stuff.
Like
People uploading to YouTube. Like, oh my god, you won't believe what's happening in Gunga right now. Like, no.
That is both funny and sad. Like, yes, when everything goes to heck, we will all have YouTube or something available. It's like, oh no, no
If the
official
servers
channel.
don't go down.
I.e.
Like let's see, Edie took it or really yep. Not only that America lost. Oh yeah, that too. America lost their number one hero, so it kind of makes sense for them to be
They have
a bit
emphasis.
more
No, that
invested,
imperialist-
have a bit more discussion on that.
Mhm.
Hey, yo, you know what's crazy? I bet when Star and Stripes died, it was basically like for the Middle East, it was the same for like when the Queen died and all of Ireland was celebrating. That was crazy. I bet that's what's going on right now. Why?
Well, Thomas is in Northern Ireland, so he was sad.
No, I'm not in Northern Ireland.
No. We ain't doing it.
Don't say that. I find that like you said Twitter lingo. I find that offensive.
Listen, bro.
I
Black
apologize.
Twitter, the Irish Twitter
Good.
linked together for that 1 week. That was legendary. Like, you
That
know
was
what?
a-
We still smoking on that imperialist pack. You know, Star and Stripes get put in a box. You know, rolled up in the wood. You know, we feeling it.
Mhm.
And
My
yeah,
captain.
so that's one of the things that I always say that
Come here.
when we
you
talk
get
about
your
stakes in
ass.
manga, people have so vastly limited perspective on what stakes and what they really mean is consequences are for a series.
Mhm.
So, for example, when you guys hear the phrase, this war had 10,000 casualties, do people hear 10,000 people died, or do they hear 10,000 people were injured and or died?
Has died.
The correct answer is the latter, not the former.
Really?
Yep. So casualties are any like more or less negative / injuries, destruction, etc. as a byproduct of the war. It is a casualty.
Oh, I thought you meant what people envision that one.
They think death. So
Yeah.
but what that also means is that the average person is literally misunderstanding the news that they're hearing anyway.
Mhm.
So what My Hero did is it gave you a bunch of casualties and then actually highlighted the nuance between what they actually are. Some people are maimed, some people are traumatized, some people are dead. The infrastructure is down. This is one of those things that we were talking about, and back when Roger came on, which I think that's been over a year now, where we were talking about the consequences of the actions that were taken in this series have always been partially sociological based. They've always been based in altering or changing aspects of society in a way to supplant the current status quo. So when we had did the villains lose? Did the villains lost the war discussion? People were saying villains lost the war. And it was like, but how? They got basically everything they wanted. And what's more,
They're just not in power. But everything is in chaos. But that's exactly what they're going for.
Like, they don't necessarily need everybody to adhere to them right away because people inevitably started to fall in line with them. And what's more, one of the things that we talked about like back then is Deafy was out in the street struggling when he could have just stayed at campus, but he was like, oh, that'll be too dangerous. And then it was like, yeah, but the irony here is that if All For One wanted to, he could have just gotten in close proximity to UA and just hit it with a giant air cannon from like a block or two away. And he still would have gotten to do all the damage he wanted to, and nobody would have had an answer because it would have been a blast out of nowhere. Is that as engaging narratively, though? No. But I think that's kind of what makes that good, is that he was just busy trying to build up for when he could have just gone through and done a couple quick hits and then been teleported out or ran out. He's instead opted for staying completely low key. Which, yeah, that means he accidentally gives Deku a training arc, but that's life. Sometimes that happens. And I think that just highlights his hubris, which it's important that we, and the other thing I like about this chapter is that one of the things that people have kind of felt is that sometimes you feel like All For One is a genius and sometimes you feel like he's an idiot. And I think lately a lot of people were feeling like All For One was dumb. Myself included was starting to get like a little like, dude, your plans are a little shaky. And so this chapter was like, once again, reminding people, no, like he does have good plans. Sometimes
literally
people
the palm of his hand, like the hand of Shimura, and it's like, yeah, I've got you in the palm of my hand right there. I knew that things would go south, but I knew that Spinner is emotional and sentimental. So here you go, Nana's hand, and just All For One is great. He is awful and he is great, and I think that's important. You have to hate him, but I also appreciate that I hate him. Sorry.
No, you're good. Because that's kind of the point, is that All For One, does he make mistakes? Yes, and that is purposely to make us see that there's a human aspect to him that sometimes miscalculates, sometimes he gets greedy, etc. Like he's supposed to have some form of vulnerability. No being is perfect. The difference here is that most of All For One's flaws make us hate him more. Whereas you look at somebody like Shigaraki or Dabi, and the flaws within their character as far as their villain archetype go makes people hate them less oftentimes. Like, oh, I hate that he's a murderer, but I feel bad for him that he grew up in an environment where he was chasing after fulfilling his father's dreams only to feel like he was cast aside, which applies really to both Dabi and Shigaraki, trying to be what their fathers wanted or feeling like their dad has rejected their dream, ultimately both of them having fathers telling them not to be heroes.
Did I catch you moaning a bee?
Hey, damn near. So AFO is a genius, but he is also a Reddit user. Yes, that is a good way to look at it. You can be smart and still be stupid. We call that smooping. But
bar, that's the bar.
There's a bunch of stuff.
If All For One is a Reddit user, what does that make? Does that make the other characters?
Like Twitter users and like Shigaraki's on 4chan.
I feel like all the girls use
Tumblr users.
All the girls use
the girls use
Instagram.
Tumblr. Let's see.
Deku definitely writes.
Toga's Tumblr.
I feel like
Toga
Tiger and Magni would definitely be on Twitter.
Tiger and Magni would be on Twitter sometimes, but they would have a lot of Tumblr posts too.
All Might would be on Google Plus.
Deku definitely writes 60 plus tweet threads about All Might and different victories he's had. He's definitely a Twitter user.
All Might uses Twitter, but not correctly. It just doesn't matter because he's All Might. He primarily is on Facebook.
He's like Togashi. It's like, you're here, man. That's all that matters.
All Might checks his Twitter. He checks his notifications, and every second notification is a Deku tweet that he's just responding to.
Oh,
that's crazy.
Mount Lady was definitely on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
OnlyFans too.
Well, that was midnight.
Yeah, but I said that quicker, so you actually took my idea. And
that's crazy. For me, we said at the same time. So
no. For me, I was quicker. Okay, I got that fast twitch muscle. Okay.
Of course.
When the characters make fun of Reddit users, All For One and Dabi are the people they're talking about.
No. Okay, like no, Donald. No. Dabi's on like 4chan, like 9gag.
Her Pookie said Deku uses TikTok. No, that's Mina.
Yeah,
Mina uses TikTok.
That is
like,
Mina.
oh my god, she
Mina, Kirishima.
Like, here's an information thread on TikTok.
I feel like Ochako, because she doesn't have a phone, is unfamiliar with social media, but the girls introduced
Toto
it
would
to
have
her.
like a Tumblr account, but it'd be like one post, just one.
Yeah.
Nah, she's too broke for that.
When
had
she gets a
flip
phone, she'll be on Instagram all the time.
Aizawa has no social media.
So, okay, so that's one of the things that's kind of funny is that when I look at how My Hero functions very similarly to timeline-wise, like Japan, like modern day Japan, and it feels like it almost functions as a slightly like a 2020 something version of certain incidents that happened in the 90s and stuff like that. I sometimes overlay like these past like 120 some years of quirk society over, you know, modern society instead of having it be a in the future, which allows us to justify Ochako's phone a lot more. Because
She got like that iPhone 7.
she's got a flip phone, and I just have a really hard time believing that the cheap phone 100 years in the future is a flip phone.
Well, he did.
It might be
make
like
sure
a
to
like a
explain-
middle class, like a mid tier
Hold on, hold on,
phone
what
in
were you
the
saying, Bolt?
market.
He did make sure to explain that like quirks have stalled technological development, and basically all of our societal advancements has been just devoted to
Quirks.
researching quirks.
Quirks and weapons, because the
I
US having
Islands.
electromagnetic fields and laser beams was probably like one of the most futuristic feeling things in the series.
I mean, Island, like you can argue Two Heroes as a canon, but like Island right there is proof that, like you said, weapons and quirks were prioritized compared to phones, computers, and any other technology.
Listen,
It was
man,
for the first time in
everybody needed
history.
a Switch. It was that simple.
Yeah, for the
We
first time
couldn't
in
go to
history,
the moon. We needed
the
to kill
arms
people,
race
bro.
was not against a technological advancement; it was a biological evolution. That's what the arms race was.
Well, some quirks would have helped like people who were just like super smart, and in some ways it would have hurt it, because let's say, for example, somebody with a quirk was smart enough that they managed to create they created a vehicle that ran on water or something like that. Just something that real simple. And
It
then
makes sense that resource-based quirks would be able to push society technologically in uneven ways, which is why you might see like, robots and stuff being actually functional, like someone's quirk can help make stuff. But then you also have like actual like everyday stuff where it's like, well, we can't like mass do this, can we? I don't know. It's all kind of a jumbled mess, but that's quirk society for you, I guess.
Well, the other thing what I was going to say is that certain advancements would have been stalled out specifically because other businesses hiring people with quirks as enforcers to destroy other businesses to make sure that they don't get a competitive edge.
And the proletariat. Let's not forget that.
Like, if I am, the previous CEO of Detnerat, and I'm getting left behind in the clothing game, and it's not like this is something that hasn't happened in real life. Yeah, that CEO might have considered, let me put together a Blackwater squad and have them take out this opposing manufacturer plant.
Hey, give them a little 1-2,
That's not
little quarterly
uncommon.
earning, take a little profit out, burn a couple facilities.
I knew a guy that was working on creating an engine that uses magnets, that was like centered around magnetism instead of gas. And he outright stated that like he's had people who were interested in investing in him, but he had no intentions on selling that engine idea or that patent to have it get, to get the help to develop it further to an American company, because he knew that they would shelve it for like 40, 50 years. Just because of their, gas industry investments, et cetera.
Yeah, the way like patents are done is like, it's a big problem, especially in the STEM fields, like engineers, all that. Like, yeah, especially for like big companies and stuff like that. No. There's a lot of stuff that gets involved with that.
Like, it just kind of is what it is. Like so you would have had a lot of power jockeying and stuff getting stunted. which works, it's a good comparison for modern day society as well as back then. See, and like the fact, I don't even know if that guy's still alive now that I think about it. Maybe that guy's dead because he had a magnetic engine idea and somebody didn't like that. But I don't know any of the specs, so don't send nobody after me if you did kill him, because I don't know nothing about the specs, nothing like that, and I'm not an engineer. So,
Well, electric cars were going to be the main thing 100 years ago, but then oil companies shut that down.
Hell, look at the textile industry and how hemp is a useful plant for textiles. That was shut down by the logging and wood companies back in the day, like paper companies and whatnot. They're like, yeah, propaganda time. And that's why I say, like, people don't understand how important like information warfare is, because you know how marijuana was made illegal?
I know how.
Partially by pitching that it would make white women sleep with men of color.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
That was one of the
They
main
also
things.
said that like men of color would get like really like violent stuff like that. That was another big rumor.
Mhm.
And that's how we got like that whole thing. And then Nixon came in and was like, these Black Panthers and hippies, we should get rid of them. And then Reagan came in and was like, the Black woman got 10 Cadillacs off of 10 credit cards that she got off the government. And then when people were bought into that, then they killed their own like social services, and then crime went up like 1,000% due to crack.
And then, well, also gotta love the Wick is terrible, and then they proceed to,
even though we was basically like Pablo Escobar putting all that cocaine in Nicaragua, but okay.
Well, what I was gonna say is Wick is terrible, but let me real quick utilize Wick and make it a government program now. So like they didn't have a problem with Wick. They had a problem with the fact that Wick made the Black Panther Party look good because they were taking care of people, stuff like that.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Which I actually watched something like a small video about how the white supremacy movement started in like 1898 in Tennessee, and how there was actually a party called the Fusionist Party started between Black and white people back in the South that actually started to gain a lot of movement, and it was basically overthrown by a bunch of like white people raiding the bases. It's apparently the only successful coup in American history, where they raided them, took over the newspapers, and then put out that white people were in fact superior, so it was okay, and we shouldn't be trying to work with Black people. And that was how they managed to get the divide between Black and white poor people to stick out and get white people to
a big thing, especially in the North, like in New York and in places where a lot of manufacturing was being built, there was a lot of times where like the workers were being exploited, right? But like white workers were so convinced that they were superior that they shouldn't unionize or like have Black men in the unions. And so a lot of the times when these like when unions were forming, a lot of these broke down into race massacres.
It's sad because everybody could have been eaten, and instead we got the society we have.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of union history that doesn't really get covered much, but yeah.
America, land of the free. That's what we are, baby.
Unless you're like poor or like non-white or like non-Christian, then
Look,
you know what? Then you die.
And if you want to understand how bad propaganda is and how bad like the brainwashing gets, I used to work with a guy who, and I'm not doing this to mock him, I need you to understand when I say that, like why this was especially baffling. He has eyesight issues. His face basically always looked like he was doing this. And
blind.
Like genuinely, I remember him saying on Facebook one day, I'm so conservative that I think only people who own land should be able to vote.
What?
And it's like, Good
Wait,
sir.
which one? Wait, hold on. Which one? Who are you talking about?
This guy, he basically a very disabled person who could
Mhm.
who qualifies for disability. Even I think he even said it, like he does qualify for disability because he's borderline legally blind. Like to
Mhm.
read his computer screen, he would bring a magnifying glass to work and be like this close to it.
Mhm.
But he was saying that he is so conservative and in line with the founding fathers and what they think, that they think that only people who owned land should be allowed to vote on elections or anything like that in the country. This is a person who back then would probably be shunned from all of society
Bro, you
and
bring
has
in a
zero
magnifying glass?
like if you need a magnifying glass to read your computer screen, you probably are disabled enough that those wealthy people who owned land would have left you out to be a peasant and left you in the streets to die.
And you would have no voice in the elections, and rich people would rich people already basically control like our fiscal policy and our social policy. It'd be even worse. Like you would have literally like if we have like 3% voice, like because like 97% of like lobby influence I read from a report um is from from lobbying in our legislature. Like we would go from 3% to zero. Okay, you'd go from NAC 3 to no NAC. Okay, it's very simple. It would be so bad.
And also, anytime for any of you guys that care, if you hear a politician say, "I want to go back to the good old days," and then they also follow that up with a 10% tax rate, understand they are not actually talking about the good old days or what built America or allowed it to have the good infrastructure it had for a long time. Because the tax rate was like 70% on people who made more than $1 million back then.
Yeah, very high tax rate. There was a lot of loopholes, but like
the tax
we
rates
still had a
used to be
substantially higher tax rate.
really high. Now the highest
especially
rate is
for
like
wealthy
37%.
people. You know,
So if
thank
you were
Reagan
rich,
for that.
you had it all the way up to like 70%, and that's what allowed them to have the money for infrastructure and all that other stuff.
That's like those tax rates are why Eisenhower was able to afford that whole war on poverty.
And that's why when people tell you this party is probably just being a little racist because they can't be talking about any of this other stuff. Because if they don't want the tax rate, if they don't want which built the infrastructure, what are they asking for? What part of the golden days
segregation?
Are you like exactly? You can't be asking
for
the good infrastructure.
Plessy v. Ferguson, like that's what they're asking.
Better schooling, none of that, because you're saying effectively, I don't want to fund any of that stuff. I don't want to fund any of the good things of the golden days. So you just want to go. You just want to go back to
socially. You want to go back socially. You want to regress socially. Yeah.
And remember, the Equal Pay Act, the law that said that you cannot just pay somebody less just because they happen to be Black or a woman, etc., wasn't passed until the 1980s. In fact, let me double check. And even then,
people in the same occupation, when you factor for race, still get paid less.
And there's actually multiple Equal Pay Acts that have had to be passed because they were trying to get people to do more and be fair.
Nowadays, they don't say, "Oh, it's because you're Black." It's because you're too inexperienced, or because you didn't have as strong. It basically ends up being as a consequence of generational power and all that, and race, you get screwed over. Now it's not just a blank.
Yep,
you're Black.
That's also why the landowners thing is so dangerous, because there's people who didn't buy land.
White people could only own land in colonial times.
Yep. So there's people who didn't own land or who wouldn't own land, but they could be given land by a family member, even if they couldn't buy it, and then they'd be allowed to vote. So you could very much control who could and couldn't vote. And you could basically give people a couple acres or an acre here or there to buy their vote. So, yeah. In fact, there was actually a politician who recently tweeted out, somebody was like, if you say only the right people should be voting, then who would that be? And then they were like, oh, this would be white men 35 through 65 would most likely be the people voting. So basically, you just don't want to worry about.
I remember that tweet. Yeah, it was by a conservative.
So yeah, but which is funny in of itself, because I'm going to let y'all know a very important secret.
Hmm.
Campaigns for the black vote are a joke.
Yeah.
To put this into perspective for you properly, 13% of the US is black. About 25 to 30% of the US counts as white women.
Yep.
Roughly 30% if we're being honest, because it's supposed to be about 60% white.
Wait, is this factoring in a white Hispanics?
Well, because considering Hispanics actually have very split votes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Typically-
but there's also like a colorism aspect to it. Like, for
But-
example, like white
Hold on, Squid. That's
Hispanics are more likely to be.
Squid. So
Sorry.
traditionally, about 50% of white women vote Republican. So this means that if a Democrat goes and says, we need to get the black vote is everything, the black vote. Especially because this happens sometimes where you'll go online and you'll see people like, black men didn't show out enough in this election. Like when Stacey Abrams lost in Georgia, for some reason they were blaming black men. 85% of black men voted for Stacey Abrams. No other demographic of male was even within 25 percentage points of voting for her. I think Latino men voted like 50-50 basically.
55.
Asian men, 55, okay.
Yeah.
So effectively, our votes didn't matter. Now you should still vote. I'm not saying don't vote, because on local levels and stuff like that, it will have an impact. But understand that as long as like 50% of white women vote Republican, it will never be black people's fault if they don't win an election, because we
Literally,
can all vote the correct way, and there will still be a 2 percentage point gap between us and white women if they vote.
And it's
half of them vote the other.
And it's also that I'd like to add this addendum is that outside of like here's the thing about the context of Georgia, Asian, Hispanic, black, basically like all like minority populations voted in surplus for Abrams. It was for all the minorities, it was higher than 50% for them. White women voted, I believe, 72% in favor of Kemp.
Yep.
And a big thing with that is we also discuss white women. I'd like to add this little addendum here. Unmarried white women tend to be majority Democrat, but again, in the South, there's a big like early marriage culture and all that stuff. So married white women are far more likely to vote in favor of Republicans, because that's also the way their father and husbands vote. There's a big influence of patriarchy, especially in the Deep South. So
Hey guys,
just keep that
I'm
in
sorry
mind.
to interrupt, but I have to get out of here. So I just wanted to say love y'all, and I hope you have a great day and all of that. Great chapter.
Stay
And
safe.
it was fun talking with you
Stay
guys.
safe, man.
as usual.
Have a good
Take
day,
care.
safe. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. Bye bye.
So yeah, I'd just like to add a little interesting like
So, yeah.
political information there.
So that's where we're at. And Terrence says that's what we accidentally do every week. We'll start off about manga, and then something in the manga is political. So then we start breaking down the politics and contrast to the real world. And that's just how things go on this stream. And
To be honest, a lot of people love those those what's the word? Those breakaways.
tangents.
Yeah, those tangents. They love it. You can see it in the chat.
I get to
So I don't
show
think
off,
that's a bad thing.
I get to show off my history knowledge, which is great. I rarely get to do that.
Sometimes I feel bad because I'm like, man, somebody walked into this thinking that we were talking, like every now and then. Which now we're at a point where I typically only get repeat viewers. It's rare that I get new viewers, but that's because I don't put out enough solo content. Whoops, my bad. Sorry. But so like now we're at a point where anybody who's here for the most part is like, time for another history lesson, I guess. Cool. So I guess it works. That said, I do want to start to wrap this up just because I do want to do some looking into Adobe Premiere, because I have some I'm going to be working on a new video editing software. So, because I'm going to be taking some of those skills over to projects for work. So I want to kind of feedback loop this into using that software to do projects for the channel.
You're trying to grind, you're trying to get your skill up.
Which will mean that I can do both. So
I
Hopefully
assume
I
that
can.
software will be Adobe, right?
Yeah, it's going to be the Adobe. So I
Mhm.
want to start using some stuff like that. So I'm probably going to try to watch some Adobe content today, see some introductory stuff, and come away with maybe
Mhm.
having another software I can make videos for you
We
guys on
use
that you might like more.
we use Adobe Premiere Pro for a lot of our projects at university. It's very good. So if you do use that, it's very good for newcomers.
hmm So let's go around the horn though, get some final thoughts on the chapter. I'll try to give you guys something in the gap weeks. I've been slacking off a lot. I need to stop doing that. You guys deserve more content. So Thomas, final
Oh,
thoughts.
I don't know if you talked about the episode, so I'll try to put this in here too.
Oh,
The
you can-
chapter is amazing. I am very disappointed that we're on break, but Horikoshi needs he needs a break from writing and for drawing. He most likely won't, knowing him, but after seeing this chapter being 14 pages, 13 excluding that Weiss blank page, Hori needs to take care of himself a lot better. I love how we're getting to see more of America. I love the weather reporter. I love how accurate she is, because that little post she did is purely, you'll see that on a lot of weather reports on the 9 o'clock news or whatever America has over there. I love the fact that Trice is back. I miss him, and just to see him go, oh Hawks, that was great. I am kind of disappointed we never got to see much of the Toga in Uraraka field by Geddes. He wanted to save this as like a little surprise and then give us a little treat on top of it, like the cherry on top of Froppy's headpiece, which is great because I am always down for seeing her get bodied and put in the pack.
Whoa.
I'm not a big fan of Froppy. Like the episode itself, when I first watched it, I got kind of disappointed because there's like, as someone who loves everything Deku, I kind of expected more from a few of the panels that got adapted. Like, for example, the kick he does to Shigaraki when Bakugo grabs Endeavor and pulls him forward. He says, "You got to make this final one count." That was kind of lackluster. The same with No Matter What Happens to Me. It wasn't done that well, but at the same time, I don't mind because most of the choreography in that episode was done well. Like the Wyoming smash, like multiple hits where he was hitting him over and over and over again. That was good. I saw a lot of people complain that page where it's like Wyoming smash and St. Louis smash, it wasn't like the manga, but at the same time, he's doing two smashes one after another. So I was fine with that. And the Texas smash was gorgeous. Like one of my favorite parts of the episode. That was adapted fantastic. I can't wait for next week. The preview for the episode didn't look that appealing, but obviously that's not everything in the episode. This was a fantastic week for My Hero. Just sad that we won't get to have a chapter next week, but that's fine. We have the episode. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I hope everyone has had a fantastic day and continue to have so. I'm out.
All right. Squid.
All right, so for this chapter, the weather person in America looked cool. So I was just drinking a smoothie, so my voice spit. Yeah, so like for this chapter, I thought it was good. Toya got that dog in him. Okay, he was listening to so much Andrew Tate in his head, he just couldn't. The ice couldn't calm him down. Okay, he was always gonna live. Okay, he got heart. That's what matters. When it comes to like All For One, he's playing like no. Okay, so for Twice, I'm glad that he's back. I really like the idea of that one, of like the one clone that gets away theory, so my boy Twice can finally eat. And I wonder, if Shiggy gains back control and sees Twice, only for Twice to like melt like right in front of him, right? And then he realized, oh, wait a minute, Twice died a long time ago. This is just a clone. That'd be a really cool moment to potentially have. So that could be setting that up. The art was good, and like I'm really interested. How hot is Toya right now? Because he seems because like he's hot enough to like straight up change the weather at this point, which is a crazy feat.
All of them can.
Mhm.
It's not really. Well, technically, it's not any one of them, which is funny because what happens at the start of the story? All Might changes the weather. What
Yeah.
does Endeavor try to do? He's trying to surpass All Might. So
Yeah. That was actually
Pulls
one of
off.
the first things I said when that page came up. I was like, as a family, they've achieved his dream
Yeah.
in the worst
But,
way,
like,
but
Yeah. So that was cool. I love the way Toya was drawn. Like he just seems to just be cooked at this point. I bet you could like put him on like a plate and just eat him because he like probably tastes like beef jerky and stuff like that. Let's see. The twice panel looked pretty good. I don't Thomas complained about like a white background in the twice panel. I didn't see anything like that. Can it
Wait, what did I do?
you pointed out that like Hori needed a break because like one of the panels
Oh
looked
no, no,
weird.
no! I said that it's 14 pages in this chapter. It'll be 13 pages, excluding the white page that was at the
Oh, yeah.
beginning. That's why I meant it.
Oh. Oh, let me look at this. Oh, wait
But
a
yeah,
minute. Hold on.
it is only a 13
13
page chapter.
Yeah, it's 13, and then you minus that one. Yeah, so wouldn't it be like 12 pages? Because if it's
Hold on. Let me look
13
at it on
total,
apps.
and like it starts with like, so then you'd have to minus one, so that'd be 12, right?
Hold on. I'm just gonna look at it on the app because the app
One,
and
2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
there's no white page.
10, 12.
yeah, because on the app there's probably no white. Yep, 13 pages.
Okay. Okay. I thought I was just looking. Yeah, it's probably
Wait,
just
there
on
isn't.
my
I'm
end.
tripping. Oops, my bad.
Yeah.
Thomas, where did you read it? On a
On
site?
Viz, I must have imagined it. My bad.
No, it's because there's like a white page at the start on Viz, just because
Oh.
if you're reading in the 2-page format.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Altogether, this is like a good chapter. I'd give it like maybe like a 7 out of 10. Like it's good, and yeah, I can't wait for next week.
Volk, final thoughts?
I really love this chapter. It was a real home run. It was delivered perfectly. It feels ominous. The clouds rolling in, the pathetic fallacy of it all, very dramatic. I also love just Twice is back. That's cool to see. There's also the question of like, again, Shigaraki All for One. It was a little bit trippy to see Deku versus All for One, and then Endeavor versus All for One is like basically fighting both at the same time. Although I do want to say that the fact that Deku has kind of had like his big moment against All for One, I think you get diminishing returns by him just beating All for One again. So that's also why I think Shigaraki's taking over. And yeah, Endeavor Hawks. We've been predicting Endeavor death for a long time. Hawks' death. We've been kind of, I think we've gone back and forth on that, but I think he might be done. I don't know. Anyway, great chapter. It's gonna be hard waiting 2 weeks, but this is what he does. He gets you with something good, and he's like, I gotta take a little bit of a break because it's I love this series so much. Really happy. I also really like the episode. Was not blown away by it. I think they should have made it more of like the big extravagant event Sakura Fest that other episodes were. It's a shame they didn't do that, but it was still pretty decent.
The way some of y'all act is crazy though. Like y'all
Oh,
basically
man,
looked at that
it's just-
episode and thought it was like a
What-
hate
what-
crime.
Okay,
You got
what
hate
gets
crime.
me is not so much people disliking the episode. It's that they start talking about animation and they start using terms that make it very clear they do not understand.
Where's Nakamura? Where is
Oh
he?
fuck! Oh fuck! Nakamura is the only animator they know. It's just insane. I saw one tweet that's like, "Oh well, you guys say that Bones is a better studio than Mappa," and I'm like, you do not understand that different teams handle different things at these studios, and that one production is not necessarily a reflection of another. It's like, oh, Bones prefers one. It's like, MHA has always been on a different type of schedule from their other shows.
Mhm.
I love how like
And people
I
just
think
do
with
not
some
understand
people,
this.
I think with some people they like think like the animators is just like one guy. He's like, oh, why did he not do his job well?
They
I
they
really
do
think
what a lot of fans do, and it's an unfortunate habit where they simplify it and they don't really want to comprehend the full process behind creating it, and they just kind of boil it down to like a few select people. Oh, that's the reason why we didn't get what we want, which is crazy because from what I've seen, the episode has been received very well, basically everywhere else.
Oh yes. I've looked at certain like My Hero Academia groups and stuff like that and seen people happy, ecstatic.
Look at the YouTube reactors. Like I like everyone I've watched are saying this is peak MHA. This is fantastic. Like MHA's episodes hasn't been this great in years. Like there's a lot of people who really like this episode. Of course, it isn't perfect, and of course, it should have been worked on because this is Deku versus Shigaraki. But
I think manga fans need to stop being precious because we're getting to a point where a lot of them clearly just are waiting for any like below 10 out of 10 animation to pick apart. Like people were ridiculing the stills, and I'm gonna be honest, they didn't look that bad to me.
No, they didn't.
I'll take it a step further and say it happened. I predicted it would happen. I was still disappointed when I saw it. Because somebody was like, Piero can take their time with the Black Clover anime as long as we don't end up getting clear blue skies, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I knew it.
Yeah.
You motherfuckers don't pay attention to shit. Horikoshi, deep blue battle.
I've seen a lot of people, especially.
Well, they'll get their wish in Core 2 in Season 7.
Yes, exactly.
But like, think about that for a second. And I said it, I was like, I know we are going to have people complain about there being blue skies during Deku vs. Shiggy, even though there's a chapter titled, the high deep blue sky, battle in the deep blue or something like that, deep blue battle, something like that. I'm like, y'all want it to be midnight when these raids are conducted at 8 a.m. on a fucking Tuesday. Like,
I don't know, no place up. I mean, if you like Antarctica, we could set that up, but I don't know.
Like it's 8 a.m. on a fucking, not even 8 a.m., like 7:30 in the morning on a damn Tuesday as a little boy is on his way to school, and you expected it to, the sky to be red? You expected dusk coloring at 7:30 a.m. before school?
No,
we all know,
bro, I want you know what I want? I want the sky to be green. All right.
We all know Japan doesn't have blue skies. What do you mean? They have purple.
Yeah, purple.
Green on Sundays.
Yeah, that's what that's what we live for. The exoticization of East Asian land.
And you know what the beauty of this is that
we're not ready for that conversation. My bad.
Look at this arc, this fight. It starts off with these blue skies. And a lot of the fight, you can be optimistic. And then, of course, you start getting more shadows thrown around because Dabi's this huge heat source, which means he's a source of light, which leads to more shadows being cast. And as they do all these big attacks and cause these steam vents and all this other stuff, and Kurogiri makes his move, what do we finally get? Rain. Rain to symbolize that this is actually a problem. But y'all don't want the sky to actually match the themes of what's going on here, because the whole point of these calamitous attacks, especially in this case, because if you have not watched the My History Academia videos on my channel, please do. I think you all have by now, but I have to say that every time just in case. When I talk about the Tokyo sarin gas attack, which was the biggest domestic terrorist attack in Japan in the last like 40 to 50 years, it took place at like 8:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. In fact, let me look at the date for y'all, just so I can. Sarin gas attack. March 20th, 1995. What time? Because I know that it was during like the morning commute rush hour to work.
Mm-hmm.
It was literally timed so that people would be on their way to work when this would happen. And that has influenced the timing of Horikoshi stuff. He puts a lot of this stuff at the morning or like when people are on their way to work, specifically because the most heinous shit that he experienced, his 9/11, when he was 8 years old, because Horikoshi was born in 87, if I remember correctly. Horikoshi was 8 years old, the same age I was when 9/11 happened, which also happened at like 10 in the morning.
When was he born?
Blue
in
skies.
1986.
Yeah. So, but I think this happened, since it happened in March and his birthday's in November, he was still 8.
Yeah.
So, what do you want?
It's like you're not every Japanese city and town are like New York. Not all the time at like 8 p.m. everyone's going to be outside and going to work.
And like
and
I'm
all
walking over here.
Yeah, like the most effective way of like this arc that's being adapted, the war. It's so effective with the casualties because it's so early in the morning when everyone is out there. None of them are probably going to be indoors unless you're elderly. Gigantamachia's destruction is more impactful because more people are injured.
Mm-hmm.
It has stakes like most people will, want. Like it's right there, and you'd
the stakes is when the world blow up due to laser. Come on.
I've seen all these opinions about, why is it big blue skies, all that. You'd have to expect these people to believe there's going to be a big blue sky in Deku Black. Like the weather in My Hero, like Aniki said, has a narrative purpose.
I bet there'll be like a Twitter comment that'll be like, for the Deku Black arc, why wasn't Deku black? Think about that. That's deep.
Like that arc specifically should have told people these are deliberate. And somehow, screw the deliberate choices. Let's not even try to think of an artistic reason. And to a certain degree, Brandon, Alves, Everything But the Rain, coming soon. So what these things also do is highlight something very important. It takes an imagery that is utilized in Bleach very well. Bleach, which I have read 470 chapters of in the past week. Yeah, I've been doing a lot lately, y'all.
You've been preparing your project.
You've been grinding. Okay?
Ichigo's despair, his depression, he has an internal world. And that internal world, there's cities. In those cities, there's skyscrapers and blue skies. As he comes to terms and interacts with his hollow side more, and it upsets him, there starts to be rain in that world. Eventually to the point where he hits a level of despair in which it is entirely flooded. Similarly, when Deku has his ideological moments, when he's focused on being a hero, when he's in a happy, healthy mental space, even these great conflicts take place under blue skies. Here, as Deku is fighting, as he is fighting All For One, yes, 470 between like last Sunday and this week. And that's only because I took a break.
The break.
I could have easily hit over 500.
You could have. Jesus.
Listen, man, you ain't putting that work in unless you put the work in. Okay?
Oh,
That's the end of Fullbring. You're right.
yeah, no,
Yeah, boy.
yeah. I finished the
Boy.
Fullbring arc, and I was like, "Damn, this is a good ass arc."
Yeah, it is.
Who was eating?
So when was this? So we get this arc with this rain as he's about to fight off one, and the thing is that not only is he fighting him after seeing a bunch of tragedies, there's a chance that he's about to get active. And if Shigaraki gets active again, the despair increases because Deku knows he's on a timer. So by the time Deku's timer runs out, what's going to happen? Shigaraki's probably going to have his quirk back. He's going to have to be on the run, and it's going to be raining, and he will be in despair due to failure.
I mean, it's not just this arc. Remember back in Shihei Hasaikai, when Deku first meets one of his biggest failures of a character, when he realizes that he failed Eri, not during the meeting, but when after Eri goes back to Chisaki, what happens when he talks to Night Eye? It's raining. It's purposely raining.
Like, people will say, and this is why I can't, because I can't take a lot of Kubo talk seriously anymore, because any symbols, any of it just
Kubo
doesn't
talk for like
get acknowledged.
90% of people. I just don't like. I basically just say cap automatically. It don't even matter if you spit; it's just still cap.
Because
I
like,
caught up to
know that
Bleach's.
y'all be on some, like, bruh.
I caught up to Fullbring. Now I'm anime only, and every talk about Kubo that I've seen over the years, now I can Now I can actually say this is all bullshit. This is pure shite that's coming out of people's mouths.
Yep. Which, how did you feel about that Blood's Vein reveal? I meant to ask you.
Oh, insane! I had the theory of especially when I saw that Yuha and
Ichigo versus Watch was crazy.
Oh, it was insane! One of the best animation, and the episode prior with Yamamoto was gorgeous. Ichigo being confirmed as a Quincy is insane.
So what was crazy for me, and has always been crazy for me, is that in the beginning, I was thinking that, like, all the way back in the beginning of the series, like as a teenager. So when I see like grown ass adults being like, it didn't make sense and it wasn't written well and I hated it, it was bullshit, it came out of nowhere, I'm like, oh, y'all have no media literacy for real.
I didn't think that was like obvious because I never hold
on, wait, what are you referring to? What are you referring to?
Ichigo's race.
Yeah.
Bro, that's like so like, bro.
Like I was very hip to it early. And so
like I didn't connect the dots.
Like they literally
I didn't think it was out of nowhere.
Like past like not that well known.
Not only that, but Aizen's speech before he got essentially sealed away was him. I think that was him hinting that he was a Quincy, right?
No, there's actually a part where Aizen says, because you are a Soul Reaper, and then a giant attack goes off, and like Ichigo's like, what did he just say?
I even said, I think I said in the Kubo chat, like, what you mean, Aizen? What is he?
So
he's a Quincy.
But yeah,
it's that simple.
Love this chapter. Maybe I'll try to take some time to do an MHA lately video, just because I haven't done a lot of solo content on MHA in a while. Not counting last week where I ended up doing the stream solo, but we had an hour, so that was cool. But maybe I'll give you guys something. Maybe try to test it out in Premiere, watch a bunch of stuff on Premiere. We'll see. Appreciate everybody though that came through. Appreciate all my viewers. Everybody, we got to send love, as much love as possible to East because he's got that health issue.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't have Aizen spoiling Yawok's reveal. Yep. One of my favorite things about that is that you can tell, like, one, if you go and look back to the Soul Society, when Ichigo and the gang break into the Soul Society, it actually forms a Quincy cross as the cannonball is hitting the barrier.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir.
There's no way.
Yeah, go back. So I actually have
a
thread. Like I was posting tweets that I was making as I was reading Bleach, in the Kubo chat, if you go in there and you scroll back up through that thread, you'll actually see that it makes a Quincy cross. It's a little broken and wobbly, but it makes a Quincy cross as they're breaking into the Soul Society. What's more is that if you look into it more, the more Ichigo uses his Soul Reaper powers throughout the series, and the more you only see White and you never see Old Man Zangetsu. Like you don't see Old Man Zangetsu for like 100+ chapters because primarily White is being displayed.
I just got the tweet. I just saw what you Jesus. Oh my god, it really was there. Holy crap.
What makes me laugh is that then when Ichigo gets his powers back after having his full bring, if you look at the shape of his sword, there's a part where Kilge is like, wait, what? And he looks at his sword. And if you look back towards Yawak's sword, you'll see that it's actually the same shape. Even before they directly state, like, this is what's going on. So his Zanpakuto looked like that. If you remember, there was also a specific phrasing when they were talking about the Quincy's where they said, people with powers like Ichigo's became Quincy's. So there was a bunch of like little verbiage that had double meaning the whole way through that once you get to the end, it's like, damn, he had this completely planned and thought out the entire way through and gave you multiple hints. And what's more is that, like, man, it just look. We could talk about all that another time, but
I need Bleach videos from you.
it's great. It's actually great. The way that like Ichigo's progression is handled, and even when you think about, and I think one of the issues is that ultimately, even more than One Piece, even more than Naruto, more than a lot of series, Bleach is a series about self-acceptance, understanding the good and the bad, and fully embracing yourself. It really is a journey of enlightenment and to understand, which is why. Anyway, y'all have a great day. We're gonna be out. Hope you enjoyed the stream. Hope you enjoyed this chapter. If you haven't started reading or watching Bleach, go ahead and do that. I suggest you read it up until the 1,000-Year Blood War. Yep. That said, there are certain pages and panels and little conversations that are clipped from the anime for 1,000-Year Blood War to kind of speed it along. So I do recommend you go back and reread at least up until where you left off in the anime if you do decide to watch it, just because it will give you a little extra context. Kisuke Urahara is the man. His storyline is actually really well set up throughout the story too. It's a journey, and I love it. And I love all you guys that were here. Love the people who were missed, people who decide to play this on a VOD and listen all the way through to this point. You get love too.